In a world where digital currencies reign supreme, one cryptocurrency is poised to redefine the game, no? Litecoin's resurrection and resurgence is coming, and the Litecoin forecast is your 24/7 guide to riding this silver surge. Join us as we stream continuously, analyzing every move, discussing macroeconomic trends, what's driving this bull market, what narratives will come into play as we move higher, and what we'll be watching for signs of a broad market top T. The Litecoin forecast illuminating the path to redemption, hosted by Y Litecoin, joining us now.
What's up, guys? How's it going? Let me turn this down. I created some new music for the stream because I run out of free DMCA free music. I feel like I made some cool stuff with that AI app. I'm curious as to what you guys think. What's up? You guys can hear me, right? It looks like, yeah, looks like it's working. What's up, Fast Willie Jackson? How you doing? I haven't seen you in here before. I usually just wait a sec for people to join in, and then we can discuss. Perfect, thanks, J-Hub. I think the music is dope. Thank you. Yeah, I've been getting better at making music. I'm curious as to what you guys think of this other song that I think is pretty good. Scott, how's it going, man? Thanks for letting me know. Good to see you back here. I made the song called We're All Gonna Make It. I'll wait for this to finish, so I'm curious what you guys think of. I made this like Avril Lavigne inspired track that I actually like. Like, I feel like in the future I'm just gonna make my own music and listen to it. I'm using Suno. So just like kind of playing around with generating tracks, figuring out what type of style I want, and then coming up with like an outline for lyrics and then tinkering with it. But I like this one. So I'll play this. This is like Avril Lavigne style. Used to listen to this kind of music when I was a little kid. Made this for like the crypto themed. I'll talk about the lower time frame stuff in just a few minutes. Did we become a stable coin? Where's the volatility? Yeah, this lower time frame action is kind of boring. I don't really like the last day since we streamed yesterday, like what's happened. Looks very similar to back here before we moved down on the super low time frames. High time frame still looks really good. Just a lot of the indicators that I look at on the short-term time frames are kind of like rolling over here as price is grinding higher. So it may take a little bit more time.
For years now, we've known it's coming, but we never gave it much thought. There are those who think
We'll see. I mean, Bitcoin rolled over a little bit. There's a CME gap that likely will close. I think on Friday the futures closed at 102.435. And then on the pair charts, I'll turn this music down. The financialization of Bitcoin is underway. The financialization of Litecoin is coming. Yeah. I mean, it's possible to happen in a pretty quick and short manner. Although I think the speculative market is always going to be separate from like the monetary adoption market. Like on a long enough time frame, the speculation should net out. But yeah, we can see a lot of interest in Litecoin if narrative changes as price goes up. But I don't really like the idea of total financialization of these assets, because that to me implies like basically porting the existing financial system on top of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Litecoin, and that system is controlled by governments, and therefore they can implement the same tax, inflation tax, and censorship that they do, which would negate the value prop. So to me, short term it's good for price if you're a speculator, but long term it's sort of irrelevant to me. Well, how are you guys doing today? Saturday. How's your weekend going? I had been streaming every day at 7 p.m. Eastern, but I felt like yesterday nothing was going to happen, so decided not to. And then we have this interview with Paul here in like an hour. So it'll be cool to talk to him. He's been here for like ever. He's been around in Bitcoin. I don't actually know what year, but I think it's like maybe earlier than 2013. We'll ask him. Sunny, nice in Florida. Yeah, it's similar here. Super nice. It's awesome. I'm used to like super cold, windy snow. I don't have really a ton to say since yesterday, but we could review the higher time frame stuff that we were talking about prior. Something to talk about. So on the higher time frames, like once we break, I'll zoom in again, like this level 138-ish, I don't know, between 135 and 140, there's a lot of resistance that we rejected from previously. But I was saying before that this next area is roughly around 165, where price had found support here twice, rejected from support. 165 to 185 is like the level that I think price would struggle around a little bit, just like it's been struggling here. And then after that, if we can clear that level, it's to new all-time highs, or roughly around to our previous all-time high. And I still expect that to happen on this next move, whenever we can break out here. We were tracking the XLM fractal, and I can pull that up again. Because it had followed so similarly. Oops. So, just in comparison for time, it took roughly 5 days before this. 5 days and 4 hours before we broke these highs. So far it's been yeah, it's been slightly longer. I think this is the same point. It's been 5 days and 16 hours. But it is a weekend. And volumes are not very high right now. I thought it was possible we could start seeing rotation from Bitcoin into altcoins this weekend, but this is a pretty low volume weekend for crypto. He was on BTC Takeover yesterday. Yeah, I just saw like a little bit of it. I didn't realize. I asked him. Kind of feel bad he has to do this back to back. But I might be talking to him about a lot of different things than he was asked about yesterday. Yeah, I heard about Glassnode not supporting Litecoin anymore. Did they just recently drop it? Like, I used to have a Glassnode subscription for years, and then I kind of just stopped using it. But they didn't have very like advanced metrics for like whenever. They had basic stuff. Did they announce something on their page here? Didn't see any official statement. Yeah, I wonder why they decided to do that. It's not like it costs them much to keep that data. So I don't really understand the decision, especially if price is breaking out and more people are interested in it. Did you guys see Michael Saylor talking about he's going to keep on raising as much money as possible to buy Bitcoin? This reminds me so much of Doquan. I remember in 2021, someone sent me that podcast, like, you have to listen to this. It sounds super interesting. It was like a few weeks before it collapsed. I'm like, man, this sounds like the biggest Ponzi ever. Is there mining in Texas? Yeah. I actually knew somebody that was mining. And then I think failed. What if Sailor isn't buying BTC? That'd probably be smart at this duration. I just don't think he's willing to really trade anything. He says he's never selling Bitcoin. So regardless of what he buys, if we do have a bear market, it's gonna not be so great. There hasn't been any news on the LTC ETFs. I haven't seen anything. I think they're just still waiting on the SEC to get back to them or make a decision on whether to delay it or approve it. I don't think they deny it though. Yeah, I don't like this. How price is meandering like this. Probably comes back down short term. And then maybe we can finally break out. As soon as you break these highs, I think it's, again, the highest percentage gain for Litecoin that we've seen so far coming, but super low time frames. I don't expect it. It could, anything can happen. I wouldn't expect this to just like break straight up from here. Might take a few days. He's making money on the Bitcoin he owns. He's not really making money. He just has unrealized gains. So on paper, yeah, the number's going up, but he can't even really, he has so much Bitcoin now, he can't sell it without affecting the market. And that's probably why he just keeps on going down the same path, because he knows that, I mean, if he's primarily a lot of the reason why the price went up, because of this leveraged Bitcoin buy, if he announces selling or ever even talks about it, people would front run him and it'd collapse the market. And if he has like a publicly known liquidation price, I don't know, you might see people short MicroStrategy heavily and then have a lot of Bitcoin dump it, try to force him to get liquidated. Yeah, I mean, I think he's issuing more stock to buy more Bitcoin, but still, I think the average buy price for the Bitcoin with MicroStrategy is like 50K. Yeah, did he? I thought they just issued more shares, not necessarily realized profits and are sitting in cash. They just own more Bitcoin at a higher average price. So he might have Bitcoin denominated profits, right? Like a certain percentage increased his Bitcoin stack by people speculating on his share price on MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy stock news. I think MicroStrategy, so let's pull that up. It's something to talk about. Like if you overlay the Bitcoin chart against MicroStrategy, I thought, and I wrote about this, like as MicroStrategy was starting to rally prior to Bitcoin, like in October, thought MicroStrategy is kind of a leading indicator. It typically is in this stage of the bull market, right? In 2020, it led Bitcoin pretty substantially and topped in February, whereas Bitcoin didn't top until May, right? MicroStrategy already had fallen 66% before Bitcoin ever rolled over, and we're forming like a very similar type of structure here. This was like a blow off. I tweeted on the day, I think, this candle that thought this looked like a blow off top, similar to back here. And you could tell with all the sentiment around the MicroStrategy maximalist types thinking it's infinite money glitch, telling their friends and family to go all in. It's definitely a top signal. But I don't think this is like a broad market top signal as it wasn't back here. I think it's just a rotational top signal for Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance. This is also the time, November 21st, around when Bitcoin dominance topped. But let's overlay BTC USD against it. So back in 2021, this isn't doing that great of a job. It's hard to tell. But MicroStrategy topped far before Bitcoin did. We had about, this was really the start of alt season. We had at least 3 months. So if we had a similar time, now we'd be in, yeah, late February, March. That's kind of where I think we'll top March of this year. Great guest on the stream. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I want to get a mix of people. So like long-term Litecoin community people that have been here a long time. Some technical like specialists, so we can talk about actual technical developments, future developments, like today, potentially Drivechains being implemented on Litecoin, since he's been trying forever to get it implemented on Bitcoin, and it's hard to change things on Bitcoin. I just want to understand the security risks, trade-offs, like how this implements into like the base layer of Litecoin. Do individuals have to run these Drivechain nodes? You know, how is it secured? Do miners do the same? Michael Saylor basically took the volatility of crypto and transferred it to his stock. I don't know. That's like a narrative. He just bought a bunch of Bitcoin, and then people, I think it was easier for traditional TradeFi investors to get access to MicroStrategy, and it's less liquid than Bitcoin, so it's kind of like these grayscale products. But there's Bitcoin ETFs too, and so I don't know why you own MicroStrategy, since it trades at a pretty huge premium to the amount of Bitcoin it has. And it just became this momentum-based trade. Michael Saylor speaks in weird metaphors, and a lot of the time it's just factually untrue. Like the things he says about Bitcoin, the most blatant example is Bitcoin being like a battery. That metaphor can apply to any money, and it's really incorrect. Money doesn't store energy. It's not like you can power your car with some Bitcoin. You can go buy some stuff that would power your car with Bitcoin. But comparing any store of value to like a battery is out there to me. Are you saying Litecoin is left behind? I don't think so. I think it's leading. Not in price, but in terms of growth. It's relatively illiquid, so this lagging can lead to leading, just like we saw in Dogecoin last cycle. If you just overlay Doge against Litecoin, you can see it pretty clearly. So it lagged up until basically February. So it made like a small move up. It didn't even break its, this doesn't have its all-time high, but its all-time high was around here. It didn't really go vertical until February. It was 2 months, like February through 3 months, 90 days, but most of the move happened here in 80 days of a 20x. It had another 50% move above its previous high, but I think Litecoin's just lagging. And like I've said before, if we really get into a true parabolic blow up top with Bitcoin, I think Litecoin will the best chance of being the best performer. But it does need to move pretty soon. I think it happens within a week or so. You're storing you're technically storing value, and if you're storing value in dollars in which they're taxing because they're printing it, yeah. They're just taxing you. I don't know why they think of it as stealing. They tax in a lot of ways. Inflation tax is just one form of tax. There's other ways to avoid tax besides buying Bitcoin. I think a lot of people in the Bitcoin world realize theft in the money supply, but then don't see it just the same as any other form of tax. It's a form of tax to me. It's one of the most aggressive forms of tax because of the amount of money they're printing. Inflation is theft, but then all taxation is theft from that point of view, which I think is true. Yeah, that's a question a lot of people ask. Is tax fair? I have the view of like strict libertarian views of all tax basically being the same, and that it is stealing. It's through the threat of violence. What's up, Hunter? How's it going? Litecoin to 200? Yeah, I might struggle around like 165 to 185, but I think we're close. Needs to work through some really short-term time frame stuff here. Might come back down to 133. Unless I start seeing on these super low time frames CMF turning up, which it is here. Maybe this will continue higher. If this started forming bullish divergence, which it might here soon. This is just one exchange though. Binance, this looks pretty good. Kraken doesn't do much volume. Bitfinex doesn't do hardly any either. Spot's holding up too. I mean, there's not much dumping of spot through this range. We could see spot market buying come in pretty soon. Good morning, Shoot. What's up, Trey? Zima, I feel like Litecoin will eventually catch up to Bitcoin as the Bitcoin supply runs out. And you will get huge moves to Litecoin. I don't see why Litecoin can't be at least 10% of Bitcoin's value. Yeah. I tend to agree. And I mean, it's more of a demand side thing for me than supply. It's like Bitcoin has this price limit, or at least monetization limit. Sure, people can keep speculating on it, but it has a limit in terms of how many goods and services can be priced in Bitcoin. Once you reach that limit, there's no more growth. It should maintain steady purchasing power, assuming the adoption holds up, but it can't grow anymore. And then people looking for growth will bet on the next chain in line to be adopted, which in the data, it shows Litecoin is that chain. I would agree. It's possible we never get to the point where there's enough demand for Bitcoin to need a second chain, but we're already to that point. We've seen it the last 7 years. Script mining is beating the competition. Yeah, I think you'll continually see script hash rate added since it's more profitable. I think people just break out spreadsheets and look, hey, I can make more money mining script coins than SHA-256 coins. So I think miners are kind of don't care what coin they're mining. There's a lot of competition in Bitcoin mining that's driving the profitability lower. But also speculators are more bullish than they're just more bullish for Bitcoin, so you can understand why there's less profit in it. People are expecting future growth in the price. Hunter, appreciate the support and compliment. Yeah, I'll try to keep going. That's the plan. Plan to do this throughout the rest of the bull market, which I think we're in the end stages of, but it's the most exciting time as well. So hopefully can get some more quality people on here, continue to provide my analysis. I don't really have anything else to talk about since yesterday. Basically the same opinion that I had, and nothing's really developed. We've just gone sideways. Has anyone been following the potential merge mining with MUC? No, but I figured other people would start trying to do that since it worked for Bell's coin. There's this narrative that you can merge mine like an infinite number of chains and that somehow that provides security. I always pushed back against the Bell's coin people, saying that was just like a speculative narrative that appealed to people so that they, would buy into it. It's really not. It provides some extra level of double spend protection, but it doesn't provide any security against censorship. And it's really hard for those types of new chains to get adopted. Like, very hard for a money, unless it does something dramatically different. Or in Litecoin's case, where the cost of Bitcoin becomes too high. Just really hard to see them last. But as far as speculation goes, if it's a narrative that makes sense to people, it pumps. Paul Sztorc, he's been a Bitcoiner for a long time. He's a really smart dude, very technical. Pretty sure he went to an Ivy League school. I can't remember, but he's been involved in Bitcoin from like the beginning. One pet is enough. Doge turned out to be the best ally. Yeah, I know that narrative's still really popular, that Doge helps like secure Litecoin long term because of the inflation. I mean, the price in the longest term will follow its adoption as a money. And if it loses that adoption, which it already has, right? Dogecoin has declined in monetary transaction volume. Eventually the price will reflect that, and then the rewards will be lower in real purchasing power terms. So I don't know. We'll have Charlie. We can ask him about this because he was the guy who came up with the idea to merge mine Doge with Litecoin. Just let him give his perspective. I'm gonna use the bathroom real quick. Be right back. Charlie's interview is on Friday at 7 Eastern. Dr. MK says nothing matters, no transaction, not how many used it, not wallet count. It does matter to some extent. If that represents real demand, it just is so small relative to the speculative demand that it tends to not move price. And because Litecoin's being monetized at low value ranges, it doesn't amount to much. But I'm saying that can change if we get the fee levels I'm expecting in Bitcoin towards the end of this cycle. Right, it can represent billions in dollars of buying if fee levels are like $300-400 for BTC, and it has tracked price historically. So I think it matters, right? People transacting on the network, they need to buy the coins to be able to use them. And if you see average transaction value move up 10x, that means basically they need 10 times the amount of coins to transact. So if you see average transaction move up 10x and number of transactions move up 3x, definitely affect the price, and then speculation can come in behind it. So we got about 20 minutes.
For years now. So your head is off and they're shutting us down. Well, fuck a motherfucker, we still running this town. It's improbable that we'd still be breathing, but we're swallowing the sun. So get down with the sound samples from downtown, and they regulate, make it pixelated like a mitigate, articulated and lacerated for sure. To run it like this, and the city's about to hear it, in the fears and the fierce winds infiltrate central planners can't skip.
Hunter, you'd like to hear Charlie talk about MWeb and how that could make Litecoin more efficient in the long run? Yeah, I'll ask him about all those things. He worked pretty hard at getting that implemented, working with David to develop it, and then getting it supported by these wallets. So I'll ask him quite a bit on that. How has widespread AI adoption affected crypto prices? I don't know. It's a good question. I think AI is still in its infancy stages, although it's changing so rapidly. I've been using it for over a year, and it's like some of the things I used to use it for would take me forever to get it right, and now I can generate this type of music in such a short amount of time. Should see a content explosion. I'll just make all my own music, probably. I'm sure in the future people are gonna make their own movies. It's gonna be pretty wild. I haven't heard back from Paul. I hope he remembers. I was supposed to remind him yesterday, but I sent him a message this morning.
Now. So your head is off and they're shutting us down. Well, fuck a motherfucker, we still running this town. It's improbable that we'd still be breathing, but we're swallowing the sun. So get down with the sound samples from downtown, and they regulate, make it pixelated like a mitigate, articulated
when that Lee being introduced to the mascot lineup. I don't know, who is that? Is that a new one, or is that the MWeb guy that they've been promoting? They got Near and Morpheus. I'm not familiar. I've heard of Near, but he's an Asian female. Yeah. AI in gaming or failed narratives. The AI narrative existed last cycle too. I'm not that bullish on decentralized AI. I think it's just hype narrative. Bullish on certain decentralized things like money and government, but and things like 3D printing or communications, but not AI. Let's look at liquidation maps.
There are those who think the AI state is an inevitability, but not the builders in the Bitcoin world. We see what's coming, and we are prepared to fight it, 'cause on our side we have a nuclear bomb. Resist.
A lot of this data is just fun to look at it, but not really actionable at all.
Years now we've known it's coming, but we never gave it much thought. There are those who think the AI state is an inevitability, but not the builders in the Bitcoin world. We see what's coming, and we are prepared to fight it, 'cause on our side we have a nuclear bomb. Resist. Try to shut us down now. Resist. Try to stay around now. Resist. But you wanna get low, low. But you wanna get low, low, low. Resist. Try to shut us down now. Resist. Try to stay around now. Resist. You wanna get low, low. You gotta get low, 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 low. For years now. So your head is off and they're shutting us down. Well, fuck a motherfucker, we still running this town. It's improbable that we'd still be breathing, but we're swallowing the sun. So get down with the sound samplers from downtown, and they regulate, make it pixelated like a mitigate, articulated and lacerated for sure. To run it like this, and the city's about to hear it, in the fears and the fierce winds infiltrated. Central planners can't scare us. Resist. They're trying to shut us down now. Resist. They're trying to stay around now. Resist. But you wanna get low, low. But you wanna get low, low, low. Resist. They're trying to shut us down now. Resist. They're trying to stay around now. Resist.
It's crazy because the future is here. Next 10 years are going to be wild. Yeah,
On the block.
I think the next 10 years will be insane because we're going to go through a lot of financial issues. At the same time, AI will continue this like exponential growth path.
If we can't resist, they try to shut us down now. Resist. They try to stay around now. Resist. But you wanna get low, low. But you wanna get low, low, low. Resist. They try to shut us down now. Resist. They try to stay around now. Resist. You wanna get low, low. You wanna get low, low. They try to shut us down now. Resist. They try to stay around now. Resist. But you wanna get low, low. You gotta get low, low.
Look at the RSI on the lower time frames.
Never gave it much thought. There are those who think the AI state is an inevitability, but not the builders in the Bitcoin world. We see what's coming, and we are prepared to fight it, 'cause on our side we have a nuclear bomb. Resist. Resist. They're trying to shut us down now. We're trying to stay around now. But you wanna get low, low. You gotta get low, low. For years now we've known it's coming, but we never gave it much thought. There are those who think the AI state is an inevitability, but not the builders in the Bitcoin world.
Can you have AI day trade for you? I still think AI for financial things is not
We have a nuclear bomb.
good enough. There are, I'm sure, like bots
Shut us down now.
that do okay, but I still think there's so much knowledge required and so like subjective that, you know, the best traders are using not one indicator, they're looking at a lot of data to form their opinion. You know, like context is really important in markets. So like based on the context we're in right now, where we just switched from this ranging environment to a trending environment, taking into account like the fact that I think we're in the end stage of the cycle, I just don't know if AI could compile all of that information and be more accurate than people who have been glued into these markets for a long time. Eventually, probably not in a very long time, they will get better than humans. But I think it's pretty far off still. How do you get this voice and song? It's just on Suno. It's hard to get the exact voice. You have to like regenerate it. Regenerate prompts a lot of time to get what you want. But I was just messing around with it in the app until I found what I wanted.
Echoes bounce on lunar ground. In space, no limits to the sound. Dial it up beyond the blue. A cosmic rave, just me and you. Touchdown lights, we're on our own. Dancing through the unknown zone. From Earth to stars, our endless tune. We're moving all the way to the moon.
I don't remember what I typed exactly, but you can just like, I think you set up a free account. But you can mess around with like styles, dance, EDM, pop, and then create your own lyrics. It's pretty easy actually.
Engines hum, countdowns clear. Rockets roar, we're shifting gear. Lift off pulse, zero G. Orbiting infinity. Moonbound rhythms loud. Distant stars glow.
I want to check out all Sztorc.
Break away. In zero gravity we sway.
This is his website, truthcoin.info.
Dancing through the endless night. Orbit spins, we're breaking free. Beats in space, wild energy. We're moonbound, rhythms loud. Distant stars aglow.
This is the company that he formed to build Drivechains.
Zero gravity we sway. Dust trails rise, lunar light. Dancing through the endless night. Orbit spins, we're breaking free. Beats in space, wild energy. We're moonbound, rhythms loud. Distant stars, a glowing crowd. Feel the thrust, let's break away. In zero gravity we sway.
You want to live in a world where you can use AI at home to create content for ourselves? Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of doing that right now. Like, I've been listening to the music I've been generating on that AI platform. Depending on how things swing, you'll drop your CD and enter coins. I think we only have 3-4 months left of this crypto cycle. Hopefully Litecoin can make this move soon, either tomorrow or the next day. I need to fix my stream setup so that when I'm interviewing people, we have something else to look at rather than the price chart. Price is below your DCA right now. Sure, we'll rally relatively soon, or I think we will. Still haven't even broken out against the altcoin market. Had major bullish monthly RSI divergence. It's like the LGC MBRV over Bitcoins. You're buying coin every other week at the $200 range. Didn't know what you're doing. Yeah, it's tough, but that's how you learn too. So based on the price right now, if it doesn't make a move in the next few days, does it make it uncertain? No, I still think we have roughly 3 months, but the most ideal situation is Litecoin follows what XRP and XLM did over the next week or two. Breaks up at least to 165, 185. I still think Litecoin has the most bullish catalyst for demand under the assumption we're getting a blow off in Bitcoin into spring, which I still believe is the most likely scenario. But no, this could potentially meander sideways for a bit longer. We're just waiting for direction. I mean, volume's been declining. It's extremely low right now. You'd expect this to break out. We'd see increased volume here shortly. Ethereum's nearly at breaking out of this March high and pretty close to all-time highs, 20% away. LTCN, I didn't re-enter. I just exited LTCN at like $38. Because the premium was like 5x at this time. And it looked bearish to me on a lot of the indicators I follow. It looked like a clear 5-wave impulse up with sort of a blow off. These last few candles were crazy. Now it's probably bullish. It's still trading at a premium and it's pretty illiquid, so it's possible this outperforms Litecoin. I think the risk, I'm less certain about it now than I was back here. I'd rather just own spot Litecoin. It's 12:58. Paul hasn't responded to me. Hopefully he did not forget, but we'll see. Give him some time here. Why do you think Sailor's doing a Doquan? Because it's kind of the same thing. Doquan was talking about having billions and billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, being the largest Bitcoin owner. It just reminded me so much of what Michael Saylor just said. Almost the exact same thing. And he's doing the same thing, right? He's like building this huge Bitcoin treasury. It's through a different means, right? It's through his company and leveraging his company to do that. Whereas Doquan did it with like a coin he launched, but the strategy was basically the same. I'd say it's a little bit more scammy on the Doquan side because he was pitching it as a stable coin. But really he was just trying to borrow a bunch of money to buy Bitcoin with. And then when Bitcoin price went down, he was pretty screwed. Or when people realized and tried to exit the stablecoin, it wasn't back to 1-to-1. Turn this down. How low will Bitcoin need to go to destroy Sailor? I'm not sure, actually. I think even if it's below his average entry price, which is around 55k, should still be able to survive. If we had a recession and his company's not doing so well and it starts losing money, then it'd be really hard for him. But I think Hunter was asking about Grayscale buying more Litecoin. They're at 2 million. But because there's a premium still and it's higher than a lot of the other alts, they should keep buying. They should continue to attract private placement investors that subscribe to their trust for that premium. I wish all the retirement account holders knew that they were buying Litecoin at such a high premium through LTCN, and instead just bought it on the spot market, so they wouldn't get screwed. What's up, Wendell? How's it going? I think Paul might have forgotten. Oh, never mind. He's coming. Sweet. He'll be in here in a sec. He just messaged me. He needs 4 more minutes. No worries, sir. Thanks. Are you guys familiar with Paul Sztorc? Yeah, there's no access. That's what LTCN is for. It's just unfortunate that I think a lot of people who buy it don't realize there's this premium. I just see a large misunderstanding of that whole product online all the time, so I'm sure it's misunderstood by people buying it. I wish it was just an ETF. I think that's a safer product for retirement customers so they can get direct exposure to Litecoin rather than allowing accredited investors to go arbitrage a premium away so that they don't really capture as much upside as they would have with an ETF. I don't understand why that's allowed, but ETFs aren't. I should change this. When Moon? I think relatively soon. I think most likely within a week or so we start moving higher aggressively. What I was saying when we first started the stream, like last night I didn't stream because I didn't think much would happen, and then this looked kind of weak, so maybe we come down a little bit further, base out a bit before trying to break to the upside. But we have this CME futures gap for Bitcoin, so that likely gets closed either tomorrow at the open or early on in the week. 2 weeks, yeah. Thanks for always coming back, though. I appreciate it. Paul will be here in like a minute or two. Take a loan in your house. I don't know about that. If anything, I would have done it at the lows when there was less risk a few months ago. Now I think using leverage to buy things, even though I'm really bullish, I'm not adding anything here. Sell the kids and the kidneys. Make wife changing money. Yeah. Females, a lot of them do respond to having money. So it's a meme, but it's actually kind of true. It's like the truth that nobody's allowed to talk about. What's up, Master? How's it going? Busy running around with the kids? Constantly making food. Got a lot of mouths to feed. I'm sure. I struggled to make food for myself. Can't imagine making 5 times the amount. Oh, we have Paul here. I'll go ahead and add him real quick. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
It's going great.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on here. We just started doing this a few weeks ago. So the stream setup's a little janky. I apologize about that, but I think it's going to improve in a week or so when I get some new equipment. But thanks for agreeing to do this.
Well, hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing? I know you were just on the Vlad's podcast yesterday.
Vlad's great. I love Vlad. Vlad is the real deal.
Yeah.
A lot of people are phoning it in.
For sure. People are finally starting to recognize Vlad. If you guys don't know, Vlad, it's at the Vlad Kostia. He has a great podcast that is really reminiscent of like the early days of Bitcoin. It's focused on the real fundamental value prop of Bitcoin and a lot of other altcoins now that he's been migrating into, pushing back against maximalism. So it's cool to see that. But Paul, you've been around for like ever, and I was trying to think, because I know I reached out to you on a different account like in 2017, but I don't know your original story. I've been asking people that have been involved for a long time about their background and how they got involved. So I'm curious as to yours because I've never heard it. If you don't mind sharing, maybe you could give us a brief.
I have shared it before, and my background is in academia. I was studying economics and working as a researcher, a statistician, back in the day. And I found Bitcoin through that article. I think it was was it Wired, or I think it was Wired had an article about Silk Road. And that article was from like 2011 or so, but I did not read it until later. I think I didn't find it until mid 2012. And I thought, well, I'm already way too late, because this is not only is this a thing that already exists. Well, first of all, I thought anyone who's like addicted to drug, I was reading in Nassim Taleb's book about how drug addicts gain like 50 IQ points when they need another hit.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I was like, that makes perfect sense. You know, that fits with my intuition and experience of the world. And I was thinking, well, if this Silk Road, this is an online drug store where everything's illegal and there's no one knows anyone's name. And I thought, well, if drug addicts could get extra drugs out of this, then they would. So it must work. You know what I mean? I thought, well, it must work. And I thought also, like, I thought kind of, I'm too late, because normally an idea shows up and it's still like in the prototype stage, and then it becomes like commercialized and it has actual end users. Like that's the end goal, is to get actual, but this already had users. It was already being used in commerce, completely the opposite of what people will talk about today. Like, say Bitcoin has no intrinsic value and it's not useful for anything, or you know, people saying that it's just doesn't actually do anything and it's just a useless asset or whatever. But these were people using it to solve a very serious problem, and the website was making like millions of dollars. You could tell. I don't remember if it was like in the article or if it was something I found since, but certainly after they arrested the Silk Road founder, like they had records of like, you know, I don't know, didn't he have like 800,000 BTC or something? He had like the
crazy amount.
Was enormous. So this was already like a completed circuit. You know what I mean? This is not even talking about like a prototype in the lab. He had already made like a working car that has like driving. So I was like, well, I missed the boat or whatever on this. So
Yeah,
that was
it's
back then.
it's
then
funny. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, please.
It's funny because actually Charlie Lee, I think, has a similar story when he thought he was late by buying Bitcoin at like $30. So it's almost identical to yours, and it's similar to everyone that joins the space, no matter if was in 2013 or 2014 or 2017. They had that same feeling. But I understand your logic, and that's interesting to hear, because it was like a working product, actually had adoption, and people were using it, which was driving the price up. And so I could understand your reasoning, but we've gone a long ways since then. You know, over the years, what convinced you that eventually, I'm sure you changed your mind on it and realized you weren't late?
Well, I was like, I need to get in. I was like, I'm going to try to get involved now, but I thought I missed the, you know, I think some things that were encouraging, they were like, so one thing was I tried to first buy some Bitcoin, and I've told this story before, but man, this was wild. Like, and I also, like, this was after like looking into it for many, many, many months. So a lot of things had already been invented, like Mt. Gox had already been invented, and BitInstant. Mt. Gox had credits, like US dollar credits. That was kind of like a synthetic. There was kind of like a Tether USD in a way. You could like send them among. So you could use BitInstant to purchase Mt. Gox US dollar credits from someone else, and then you could buy Bitcoin on Mt. Gox, and then you could withdraw it to your node.
Gotcha.
But that was so difficult. That made me think, we really are, because now this looks a lot more like something that's really early because it's not streamlined, and it was hell. And I had no idea for BitInstant, you had to go to like a CVS and use the weird red phone, and this person's asking all these awkward questions. Where do you live? Like, what is your social security number, etc. And you're using this weird red phone, and then the prints out a receipt, and you have to go up to the counter, and you had to pay with cash. I had never experienced. I'd led like a sheltered life as like a white guy from Connecticut.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I was excited. My parents let me open like a checking account when I was like 16 or something. which you can do with your parents' permission. And I was so excited to take all my cash from my little cash box that I had in my room as a young child, basically, and turn it in for real money, which is the adult checking. I had no idea about this whole thing. I was totally baffled, and luckily, I happened to have, just luckily, I happened to have enough cash in my wallet. I had no idea this would be required. So that was one thing, and I was like, okay, it's really, really hard to buy, so it's actually still pretty early. And this also was like the unbanked people, like life is hell for them, because I was always like fully banked as I think. So I didn't know any of this about the whole, like, I didn't know anything about the unbanked, because again, I was like a good student, white guy from Connecticut. Like, this is the picture I'm trying to paint.
Yeah.
And so, like, I was like, I don't know, unbanked, like this, that means like they haven't built a bank in that part of Africa or something yet. I had no idea. Like, I had no idea about. I was very naive about many, many, many things. So then you start, and you're like, people said on the Bitcoin Talk forum, they were saying like Western Union charges for poor people in America who have a job as like a roofer or something, or they're cleaning houses, and they want to send money back to like Guatemala or something. They charge like $29.99 plus like 15% or something. And I thought, there's no way that's true. I thought that can't possibly be true. I just thought that's impossible. I like refused to believe it. I thought, I don't know, people on Bitcoin Talk are just making stuff up. And I just like, you look into all this and you find out that it's actually true. And then you just think like, why is there no competitor? And it actually took me many years to figure out all this stuff. But the point is, I figured out that a lot of it was true. And, and it's like, a lot of it has to do with like corruption in Central America and stuff that I wouldn't figure out for like another 10 or 15 years. But I was just like, no, it is true. Like, that is actually the price, or whatever it was, the price. Then there was this thing with Douala early on. Douala was this US dollar thing that had no chargebacks. And I didn't understand the full context of this at the time, but people were using Douala to buy and sell Bitcoin. And then Douala went back on their promise to not do chargebacks, and they started doing chargebacks. And they went back, and you could look at the Wayback Machine, how they edited their website and were lying about this. And so again, I was very naive about all this. I didn't understand like, why is it like this? But you could start to see that the existing world like was like totally deficient in this like ability. You couldn't like just send someone money the way you could send them like an email or something. It was like, this was like bizarre for me. It was very bizarre.
I see. And so that's where you saw the Bitcoin value prop early on, I'm assuming.
Yes. Okay.
And so that was what I think the narrative around Bitcoin, at least in my head, because I wasn't around that early, but was a tool for remittances, cross-border payments, and sending money at low cost. And it's sort of evolved over time from like medium of exchange, perfect ideal medium of exchange, internet money, to this huge speculative store of value. Did you foresee the development to where we're at now back then, or was it mainly?
My view back then, there was a slogan, Bitcoin versus the banks, and that's what I thought it was. And I knew a lot about banking because of my background. I had a background in economics, and I actually was working for a Federal Reserve chairman at the time. He wasn't acting. Wow. He wasn't acting he was a professor at Yale, but he had been, or whatever. So I actually knew quite a bit about it, and I knew that banking and payments were connected. I knew the history, a little bit of the history of like clearinghouses and stuff like that. The Fed is basically like a clearinghouse of clearinghouses. So,
for sure.
So basically, this I have a different view about this medium of exchange store value thing. Like, I always thought that they were all related, and that there was no. It's kind of like anything where you would make progress on all the different fronts. So it would just be like better. Every improvement in store of value is better. Every improvement. So like when multi-sig came out, or pay to script hash came out, and like vaults today, this idea is innovated. The idea, the vaults idea is very old. It's like from like 2015 or something, but we still haven't implemented it in BTC. But these are things that make it easier to store Bitcoin safely and conveniently. So I was like, okay, when the paper wallets came out, when Brain Wallet came out, all these things are better store of value. the BIP39 word list. This makes it easier to store your Bitcoin. So these are like inventions in the store value category. And I thought back then, I mean, a BitPay was big. Do you remember BitPay? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember. And then
back then, I thought
really popular.
BitPay is like the greatest idea ever, because everyone's always asking when you get involved. In the early days of Bitcoin, you tell people about Bitcoin, they'd say, "You say it's this new form of money," and then people would say, "Who accepts it?"
Mm-hmm.
And then you had to say like, I don't know, like one guy. But with BitPay, you could say, oh, actually, anyone can, and it's a great deal for the merchant. BitPay flipped everyone into like a salesperson for Bitcoin, because you just say, you can go with BitPay, and there's no processing fees, and you get cash the next day. And then they only charge 1% after the first million. I had like all the talking points like memorized. So I was not really like a Bitcoin shill, because I'm enough of a student of human nature to know that wouldn't work. But if people ask, and if people ask, then I'm like ready to go. I was like fully ready to go to like orange pill people or whatever, because the BitPay was great. And then there was this other site. It was eventually called Purse.io. It was called something else when it first started, but there was like it was just like you could buy anything on Amazon. You could go to the site, make like a list of like, here's what I want to buy, fund it with BTC. They would buy it for you. So then you could buy anything with Bitcoin, and that was great. Even though I think, of course, knowing what we know now, I think probably some of it was technically illegal or whatever. But there was a site, Purse.io. You could buy anything on Amazon for 15% off, because people have got all these Amazon points.
Mm-hmm.
These are inventions in the medium of exchange direction. And of course, everything that anyone would do for adoption, such as Roger Ver would go like around and talk. He would give these talks.
Yeah, he was great.
And he was like, banging the war drum or whatever and making a lot of noise and saying everyone should get on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I view them all as connected. And I thought the idea of prioritizing one over the other, the idea of that one has to come before the other, none of that ever made any sense to me, and it still doesn't. I don't know. This is just an idea that this is a meme, this idea came out of the mist somewhere, and it's just spreading. And it's like everyone has the flu. But I don't understand it at all. It's like saying that a language has to be really good at being spoken and being written and being like short enough to understand and being like easy to listen to. Like this is just all the same at once,
Yeah, I agree. I've always had the same view that it has to be both simultaneously, and they would progress together. And if it starts to lose the characteristics of a good medium of exchange, whether it's too expensive or not private enough, then it also affects similarly the store value qualities, right? So I have the same exact view. That's interesting. I wanted to ask you a little bit how you first approached it. You said you had a economics background.
Yes.
You went to school for this, so you're familiar with the financial world, worked for some department of the Federal Reserve.
I was working for the university, but the person I was working for was
okay.
Very, 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 very experienced and author of a famous economics textbook, and was plugged into everything you'd be plugged into. He was plugged into.
Gotcha. How did you start on the development side? Because I know you're very proficient in coding and the software architecture, and you're
I
working.
was a statistician, and actually, to be a statistician, like to be a researcher in economics, you actually like basically must be a programmer to some extent, because you're like pulling data around and like doing all these sort of mathematical statistical operations, and like you're producing like graphs and charts. So actually, that sort of came with it, the job, I was just like a lot of people. I was a little bit self-taught, interested in that, just using the computer to solve my own problems.
And so then Bitcoin kind of furthered your interest in software development because you were trying to understand it, I assume?
Right.
Okay. And then you eventually started writing code, I imagine, since you started Layer 2 Labs.
Now, luckily, I have other people who help with that. But yes, I did write some. In fact, this TruthCoin project that you have open now, I originally wrote in a language called R, which is an academic statistics language. I wrote this what was originally this prediction market software.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I wanted to ask you about with this blog and the prediction markets. But I was just first interested in how you approach this. So it was mainly from an economic point of view. So you had a pretty deep understanding from that sense, and then the coding kind of came later as I'm piecing this together. But we can talk about that right now. The prediction markets, like Polymarket has grown tremendously and become super popular, but you were one of the first people that suggested this of like doing it natively on Bitcoin, right?
Right.
And when was that? Was that like 2015 that you had this idea?
2013, 2012.
Oh, it's 2013. So even before then, what
It
were
was like December 2013 that I had finished the R code.
Gotcha.
So it was the end of 2013. It was actually, what happened was there was a site called InTrade. InTrade was a prediction market site. It was like the original Polymarket in a way. And but it was closed down by the government in 2012. And so then InTrade was my favorite website on the internet. So you can imagine how I feel about Polymarket now. Polymarket is like, I have like a lot of very intense, like conflicting emotions with Polymarket, because now like Polymarket is like what I always knew InTrade would be, and what I always knew we could build on Bitcoin and all this stuff, but also Polymarket is not quite doing it exactly the way that I would do it. But I actually kind of like that in a way. But then also I feel kind of like bittersweet about it, because maybe if I had done things differently, we could have had this. I always knew this idea was a winning idea, so maybe I would have brought it into the world sooner. And maybe, who knows, like that was maybe a mistake for me and for everyone, you know. And but also like it's also like vindication and all this other stuff like that. So Polymarket is like a much more intense version of InTrade. But InTrade was closed down, and I kind of like swore revenge. And I was like, I will make a version of InTrade that you cannot close down, and then it's fully decentralized and doesn't have an operator. So again, Polymarket has like a administration and like a like a CEO and like a it has the leader guy whose phone they took and they raided his apartment. And that was what I was thinking about, because this stuff had happened with InTrade, and InTrade had closed down as a result. So yeah, I was like totally familiar with InTrade. I knew I had corresponded with and spoken with some of the guy who became the CEO. There was a CEO, and he went hiking on Mount Everest and died, actually. And that thrust the company into like a spiral of, it's like a long story. But I knew a lot of the people who not a lot, but I knew some of the people some of the high important people who worked at InTrade. And I would visit the site all the time. So it was after 2012, after the 2012 election, that it was closed down, and then I resolved to build the decentralized version, which I did in 2016. I mean, 2013. I said the wrong word there. I don't know.
No worries. And then what happened? So what prevented it from like manifesting into a product that people were excited about, people used? Was it government regulation again?
Oh, well, in a way it was, I suppose. But there are a lot. It was a very interesting story, really. So I had written like the prototype of the novel features. So I had like the peer-to-peer Oracle was like, how does the software figure out what actually happened in the real world? And still to this day, no one has come any close. Like, this is like a really bizarre problem, and everyone just phones it out now. They just say we'll have competing oracles, or we'll just have like 2 of 3, or we'll just Polymarket just like has like an admin, just like most people just have like an admin do it, which is something that I also advocated that a lot of people do. It's a long story, like fully decentralized version versus just someone could just start a website. So Polymarket in a way took that suggestion in a way, although I'm sure they probably didn't hear it from me. But there was that, and there was also the trading with the market scoring rules. The market scoring rules, I told Vitalik about this when he was starting Ethereum, and he took this idea, like this is now the AMMs, the automated market makers. But this idea is from Robin Hanson. I took it from him, and then Vitalik took it from me, and then now it's become like this huge thing that so yet another great idea, which is just a way of doing trades like as a series of append only messages, so you don't have to like match, you don't have to do any like order matching or anything.
Wow. So that must be bittersweet as well.
2013. So I had done that in this R code, but I had not done anything that was like, how does the blockchain, like how would it interface with Bitcoin transactions or anything like that? I had not done any of that. I had just done like the novel parts, the new parts. And then what I decided to do was, in 2014, I decided I'm going to go, because no one really knows about this. So I'm going to write all this stuff. So that was the Bitcoin Hive Mind site. And I was like, I'll write all these papers explaining what this does. I'll make like a little web demo that I did. and I will try to go on podcasts and stuff, which I did. I went on Let's Talk Bitcoin like in April. So in 2014, I was kind of like trying to present the idea to people. People were very confused by the idea, unfortunately. Their loss. But what happened near the end of 2014 was that so like I was Blockstream came out with their paper on sidechains October 2014, the first sidechains paper, and then it sort of seemed like they had uncovered all that other stuff about like how to take, here's Bitcoin L1, and then we'll interface the coins with a different piece of software that can do whatever it wants. And I thought, aha, this is the solution. So I'll just let them do it, because everyone at the time, including Gavin Andreessen and every single person was saying like, oh, these are the smartest people in the universe. And so I was like, perfect, you know. They actually sent me an email offering me a partnership in November 2014. But this is to your point about they were worried about the regulation of prediction markets. So they were kind of like going a little slow on it. And then Roger Ver in December 2014, he flew me down to where he was hanging out in St. Kitts. And then he paid me to quit my job in academia and actually work on it full time. In 2015, myself and another developer that Roger had hired, we did produce the software that was like a fork of Bitcoin, and it was like a demo software that actually kind of worked, and it had like graphical user interface. You can actually, if you go to the Bitcoin Hive Mind site, there's screenshots of it there. They're from like 2015 or something.
The .com.
Yeah, and if you scroll down, I have some talks, but there's like screenshots of the software from like 2015 or something. It's just kind of funny.
Wow. Yeah, it looks so different from today, but yeah, this is 2014, so a long time ago.
And so this was like stuff that had been made, and but you couldn't connect it to Bitcoin until Blockstream finished their sidechain stuff. So then, as we finished our work, I looked into what Blockstream was doing, and it turns out they weren't doing anything. A lot of what they had thought of was very confusing, and they hadn't implemented anything. So there was no sidechain software, and there still isn't. There's just Liquid, which is a multisig, but that isn't anything. There's no difference between a multisig that you would make, and on L1, there's no difference between a multisig. It's just you and your 14 friends deciding who gets the money. There's no difference between that and BTC. I mean, excuse me, Liquid. I don't know. I said the wrong thing there. But so they had done that, and I was like, this isn't very good. And that is when I came up with Drivechain in November 2015, because I needed an actual solution to the two-way peg to get it to work. And so then really weird stuff happened after that. So then, like, so yeah, you think like, how could that, like, an enormous amount of progress had just been made from like literally like the end of, it was like January 2013 when I swore revenge, and then to the end of 2015 I had built the software and designed the right two-way peg, and then what happened instead was just that Bitcoin development was like taken over by this bureaucratic process. The scaling war made everything political, and as a result, I think enormous damage was done to Bitcoin's trajectory. Basically nothing has happened since that time period, the end of 2015, which was Scaling Conference 1, Scaling Bitcoin 1, and Scaling Bitcoin 2, which was December 2015. Since then, really nothing useful has happened in Bitcoin, and everything has been a developer grift, and everything has been to support the Lightning Network, which is like a failed idea. And so, unfortunately, with that avenue of progress closed off, people just retreated to doing only store of value, and it became annoying. So one thing is that altcoins started to become big. So then it became like, if you were talking about features, then you were like an altcoiner, and this was like. So yeah, I think this entire 10-year period of 2015 to 2025 will be written about as a kind of dark ages for Bitcoin.
For Bitcoin, especially in terms of adding competitive features, development.
Very interesting. The price has skyrocketed. So I don't know if maybe not, but I think at the end of the day, if you don't have users, this is the medium of exchange for store value, which is that the transaction fees paid that is like the revenue of a corporation, and the price is, this is like the stock price.
Mm-hmm.
The stock price is, when the stock price is high, that's very good for the company because it says everyone's got a future at the company and it's easier to raise money. You know, you can issue shares. So, but ultimately, the stock price is totally dependent on actually getting revenue, getting users. So,
For sure, I would agree with that. So basically, to sum up, you had this idea very early on for betting markets, prediction markets. You developed it, tried to implement it, came up with a solution for Drivechains because Liquid hadn't, or Blockstream hadn't done what they had said they were going to do, and then you tried to get Drivechains through a BIP, or tried to get it added to Bitcoin, but basically had been stifled by the political.
I need to clarify this point because it's actually very kind of confusing, and I think it's just like hard for people to wrap their head around exactly what. And even me, it's kind of bizarre. But Drivechain in 2015 was only a blog post in English, so there was no code. But I thought, of course, everyone will recognize that this is the best idea, and of course, it solves the block size problem also, because you have small block L1, large block L2. Everyone just goes on whichever part of the network they prefer, and the problem is solved. The issue is that, ironically, Drivechain suffered as a result of being a solution to the block size debate, because it then had to compete with what other people had preferred, like SegWit. So SegWit, everyone came out of scaling Bitcoin 2, thinking SegWit's the way to go. Like literally everyone. And then everyone said, okay, it'll be ready by April 1st. And then people said Lightning is like 3 months away. So I was just kind of like, okay, there's this huge issue facing the whole community, the scaling debate. And everyone has said, we must do SegWit and Lightning. We must all come together. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't going to like oppose that. I was like, whatever. Like, you know, I thought everything was fine. So I was just like, okay, I'll just sort of wait. Mm-hmm. Then SegWit wasn't finished until the hackathon at the end of Scaling Bitcoin 3, which was in October. And at this point, people's emotions had gotten more involved, and Ethereum went from being like less than 1% of Bitcoin to like 30% of Bitcoin in terms of market capitalization. So at this point, and then the people were so angry. The miners and large blockers were so angry that the process had taken so long that they were going to blockade SegWit until they got their block size increased. So this entire scaling war was like a huge distraction. And no one actually, but again, no one had really done, there was no one working on any Drivechain code. I was still like kind of just tinkering with Hivemind or writing stuff or trying to, because in 2016, what I had shifted to doing was sort of defending Drivechain, and I did these 2 giant presentations. One of them was in June and one was in September. One was about sidechain privatization, which is now today, this is called MEV or cross-chain MEV. So I pre-anticipated all of that and solved all of that. And then in September, I wrote the case against worrying, like sidechain risks. And that pre-anticipated all the arguments that have happened since. Even like when people talk about Drivechain today, they're just repeating something that I had refuted years and years ago. In January 2017, I invented blind merge mining, which solves all kinds of MEV. But really, the whole MEV issue should never have been, and the miner centralization these should never have been solved, because the people understanding them had no idea what they were talking about, and many of them still don't. So this is Peter Todd, who still to this day has no idea if you can outsource the running of a sidechain node or not. He flips back and forth, contradicting himself like multiple times in like the same paragraph. So this whole issue is just a confusion, but I solved it anyway. I was too good at solving things. So in January, I had solved that. And but at this point, everything was like breaking down in the Bitcoin world, where like the large blockers were just saying, we're trying to pull people into what would later become Bitcoin Cash. The small blockers were saying, like, what do you hire Bitcoin for? Store of value versus medium of exchange. This trope had spread, and so everyone was saying, we don't want features, and people were saying, we don't want transactions. People were saying, we want fee pressure, so we don't want sidechains that keep increasing the block size because we want there to be $50 fees per transaction and other things like that. So actually everything was like going a total death spiral there. And then when Bitcoin Cash split off in 2017, those would have been like customers of Drivechain. So then when they were gone, then it was kind of like, also Drivechain is very miner centric and everyone hated the miners because of the SegWit blockade that had been going on. So this like kind of set back the idea.
I see.
And then like, I don't know, like everything like passed into like a weird dark age where just like nothing was getting done. But it wasn't until then that I even started to write any Drivechain code. And the Drivechain part on L1 is very simple. It's just a thing that counts to 13,000. But even just working with Bitcoin is difficult. So we had a version that was a fork of like a 2017 version of Bitcoin, like 1699 or something, that we never rebased or changed, me and the other people who were interested in Drivechain. So we had that old version for the L1, and we started to just like tinker with it. And then the issue with Drivechain is that actually all the work is on the L2. So it's like SegWit kind of helped enable Lightning Network.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do the SegWit part, but also I had to make like an actual functioning L2 chain. So that actually took a while. So then I kind of did that from like the end of 2017 to like 2019, 2020. So then I did that. But I was kind of just going like this particular time, it was just like I was not I was just kind of doing it in my spare time. I was not like with Layer 2 Labs. I hired a bunch of people and we had funding. So then with Layer 2 Labs it became more serious. We had and it is now becoming much more serious because we made so yeah, sorry, this is a very long-winded story, but you fast forward to like 2022. It was the end of 2022. Someone convinced me, someone I'd known for a long time in the space. They said, you have to start a company because I've been like complaining about Bitcoin sucks or whatever. It's funny. I was like a Bitcoin maximalist and like BTC, love BTC, and I'm pro network effects and all this stuff. But I was like a critic of Bitcoin Cash, critic of Ethereum, critic of Litecoin, critic of BTC. I was just saying what everyone's doing sucks. And then someone said, okay, start a company. So then we raised the money at the end of like, I made like started making the deck like in early 2022. As you may know, that usually takes like a while to like hammer that out into like something that people finally understand. Then we raised the money, but FTX had like exploded at like that exact time, like September through November. We were like getting the money like wired in, but then like FTX exploded at that time. But then December we kind of started, and then in the first year, 2013, we made a lot of progress. So we had new side chains that were like a clone of Ethereum, clone of Zcash. We had the Zcash one before in like a prototype thing, but it was like there was no. It's like hard to explain the details, but there was a lot of progress. We had like a thing with for bit assets that was like an ordinals or like a counterparty type thing. We had like a name coin thing. So we had all this stuff and we were getting it all to work. And then even we had Luke wanted some work at the time. He had not started Ocean because he had just been hacked and lost all of his coins, Luke Dash Jr. So we hired him to write the pull request. Luke wrote the pull request at the end of like August, and then in September there was like this explosion of like interest and controversy and all this other stuff. And then an interesting thing that happened after 2023 ended was it was clear that like the controversy was even greater than ever, even though like Drivechain is this opt-in ignorable soft fork that you don't even notice whether or not it's activated or not. So it is the most like consensual, ignorable, reversible thing ever designed, and all the L2s are ignorable as well. So it's perfect, but still like people were just like saying these crazy things. And the Bitcoin core, the Luke's pull request was clearly going nowhere. And so then I switched to this thing, QSIF, and I also switched to this thing, the Signet, which is like you have your own network with like fake coins. We had that before, but it was with mining, and it was like so. I'm almost done with this crazy story, but this is almost so like this last year has been the year of getting it to work with the unmodified version of Bitcoin Core, which will also let it work with unmodified, Litecoin, I think. And
Gotcha.
so it's like we still, for all these years, we still have the old thing from like 2019 version of Bitcoin Core that we had just been tinkering with and forked on GitHub, and it was like our own thing, our own like creation. You could not possibly merge what we had done back. We had customized it. We made it much better. We changed the graphical interface and everything. So now I have modularized everything. I have made it so that Bitcoin Core is just like an untouched dependency, or like a kind of just something that you just keep, and then there is no pull request to Bitcoin Core required. We try to get the software to work. We try to have all the software to have like a front end, graphical user interface, and work for all the operating systems and work with the play money. So that has been like, this year has been like much more of like a heads down. How do we take the stuff that had been done before and make it something that would actually come into the world with the QSIF idea, which Litecoin can easily reuse to add the whole thing.
I see.
Without Litecoin code.
That's really interesting because, and I have a lot of questions on the specific details as to how that exactly works. But I had one before we get into the details of Drivechains and how that's implemented through this new QSIF. I wanted to get your perspective because you said early on you were basically a Bitcoin maximalist, had this idea that you're kind of politically outcasted in a sense from like 2015 through 2017, recognized that Bitcoin had sort of stalled in development. It was really hard to get changes made. And then from 2017 onwards and to today, it seems like you've potentially shifted your perspective a little bit on the altcoin market. How is that? How has your perspective shifted in like a broad sense, and how do you view the like future of this market developing through Drivechains? Are you still thinking that it'll be a like winner takes all market where whoever gets the most users potentially through these Drivechains will outcompete long term, or how do you view that in general?
Whoever gets the most users will be the one. There will be one winner, and I have always believed that, and I think I always will. Maybe not. I don't know. But maybe I can imagine something happen that. But I think you have to look at it from my point of view, which is I always thought Bitcoin is open source and we'll just take any good ideas. So then my eyes were really opened when it was like, oh, okay, many good ideas are not being taken. So even you see that now with basically all the soft fork, all the CTV, any APO, TX hash, opcat, opvault. These are all like these covenant proposals. 100% of them should be added to Bitcoin like as quickly as possible. So they should all be added. They are all perfectly safe. They are all reversible and ignorable. I mean, I don't know the actual details of each particular one, but assuming that they are written the way BIP300 and CTV and APO and check lock time verify and all the other ones. So unless there's some kind of like unnecessary mistake but there's all soft forks can be just, all the ones that are based on opcodes can just be reversed later by just shutting the opcode off. So all these are 100% safe, but the official policy of Bitcoin Core is not, we will add the best features as quickly as possible. So that was one thing where I was like, okay, I was wrong about that. The other thing is I always thought sidechains were right around the corner because, remember, I was designing a sidechain like in 2013. So I was like, sidechains will obviously happen. And then I thought in 2015, I was like, okay, Blockstream's not doing it, but that doesn't matter. Anyone could do it. And I wrote the blog post about it. So I always thought, okay, whatever, like tomorrow we'll just have sidechains and then the most successful altcoin will just have its features copied, But instead, there's now an effort to destroy Bitcoin from within the community of people who just don't want features, they don't want adoption, and they don't care about users. And so I think like eventually the tech stack will continue to improve. At a certain point, it will be the case that it will have improved so much that anyone can launch a new coin on their laptop where the full node cost is very low. It works on normal internet, normal bandwidth, normal hard disk space. It has perfect privacy. It scales to 8 billion people. It generates billions of dollars per year, hundreds of billions of dollars in mining revenue if it attracts 8 billion people. And it has every feature, it has every EVM, you can issue tokens. So eventually it'll reach the point where the open source technology available to anyone is that good. And at that point, it will only be adoption, will be the only variable that separates them. And so then the one with the most adoption will just have a runaway network effect. And then that one will have 8 billion daily users. And then everything else will go to zero. So that's my point of view. I think this is a little confused sometimes because people say, oh, well, there's only going to be one software. And again, I have never believed that because I've always been the sidechain guy. I always thought there'll be like one L1 software, but it won't matter because you have as many sidechains as you want. It'd be like the App Store. You just have whatever sidechain, and those will compete for users with each other. So if you have a piece of software and you take 2 days off of vacation and then your competitor implements something great, you lose all of your users. So I'm not saying like it'll be frozen in time and there'll be a monopoly. And in fact, the Bitcoin Core monopoly is exactly what has produced this complacency and what is the number one source of Bitcoin going to zero instead of to the ceiling, which is like whatever, like $15-20 million per coin.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I do 100% think that because everything is open source, it can be implemented on the chain that has the most network effects. It's extremely hard early on to get these monetary network effects going for people to actually use it and trust it. So Bitcoin had that early on, and then obviously, as you said, has lost it. Have you ever taken the perspective, like trying to argue against your own point of view, like seeing like what the trade-offs are, or what they were trying to protect Bitcoin from? I'm assuming you're
the developers, core
what's the reasoning for potentially stifling adoption from your sense? Stifling innovation and adding.
I don't think they realize they are doing it. I think some of them maybe do, but I think so. Some of it makes more sense if you take it day by day in the details, So like 2015, everyone agreed. SegWit was like the consensus view after. This is going to be a long story, so you're going to have to interrupt. I'm going to try not to make it long, but like this is like a war story question. So please interrupt when you can't take it anymore. But I'm going to just take it day by day. 2015, SegWit is the thing. So I did present Drivechain at Scaling 2. It was like one of the non-recorded. There were like some talks that were not recorded. So, but I was there. I was invited to talk about. I did talk about it, and of course, what was I going to say really? Because I had just come up with it. Scaling 2 was like December 15th, and I had published like right before Thanksgiving. I'd published Drivechain, so it was like brand new. So like it was like too early. So SegWit was this view that everyone was going to do SegWit, and we were going to do Lightning. And that was like Lightning's great because the payments are instant, they're off chain, so they're private. Everyone had all this optimism. Then there was this. Someone said something about April 1st, SegWit being done, but of course it wasn't done. As I mentioned, it wasn't done for a while. Then there was this what was it called, the Hong Kong Agreement. The miners were getting annoyed about the blocks being full and the other large blockers. So there was this agreement. And then in 2016, there was more and more anxiety about this question, and the large blockers and small blockers were dividing into camps more and more and fighting each other, and they were not happy about slogans were being created, and people were saying mean things about each other. At Scaling 3, the organizers had changed it from more of like a summit to discuss a conflict or a grievance to just like an academic discussion of things. I had one of only 3 talks about scaling. All the talks about scaling, which were only 3, were like very impractical. Like one of them was about like Schnorr signatures aggregation, which we still don't have in Bitcoin. Schnorr signature aggregation will save space. So, but that was way off. There was no Schnorr like BIP or anything because SegWit hadn't even shipped until the hackathon after the conference. And I had one about scaling with sidechains, which was the only useful one. But again, I had no real software at this point. I was just trying to, I thought like once people understand this idea, they will obviously just drop whatever they are doing and work on it. Because of course it's like way better in every way. Maybe a mistaken view, but I was like, this is what I was doing at the time. So, and again, I was still thinking like about, oh, how do I get this prediction market thing? I wasn't really thinking about that. This was kind of like, I was kind of like drawn into this as like a sideshow. But I was very interested in Bitcoin, of course, and was starting to get more interested in making this commentary that no one else was making. And then I can't remember, the third one was like Mimblewimble, which was like this really weird thing, but no, there was no code and there was no possibility of it ever. It was like the blockchain shrinks. It was later determined that this doesn't really help. This is a Litecoin interesting point, but it's like this doesn't necessarily really help with scaling, because in real time, as you download the blocks, you cannot shrink them. So you can only shrink them like with the initial block download. So it's like the scaling benefits ended up not even being that great. And the privacy benefits are also not that great, because the attacker can just listen on the network and log everything. So then even though you've aggregated it for anyone who wants to download it now, anyone who was listening at the time has it in their log file. But none of this was even known at the time. Mimblewimble is new. So I had the only talk, and I had like no code. And all the rest of the talks, and in fact, if you looked in the program notes, the first half of the first day was a section called privacy. So all these people had come, these unsatisfied large blockers who were pissed off. They had come and they were like, one of them left immediately after seeing the program, and they thought this isn't going to help. And they left to signal Bitcoin Unlimited, because they had been getting information from like Peter Risen and all these other people about like, you don't have to deal with these people. These people don't, for some reason, these people are not. So I'm trying to summarize this in some way, because the question was, why are they stalling it? But I think people, they really believed in Lightning, and they really just believed that the large blocks wouldn't work at all. So, and they didn't really think about it other than that. They didn't really think about like, okay, sidechains are not really large blocks. There's not large blocks on L1, and there's a series of L2 blocks. So it's like a la carte. But a lot of people thought like that will just, that will never work. And so people thought this is the only idea we have. SegWit is the only thing that will work. And Lightning is the only thing that will work. So they were kind of just betting. And then after it became political, it was very difficult for anyone to speak honestly about, if you were criticizing your own side, it made you look like a large blocker. And if you were criticizing the other side, then that was easy to do. So
I see. Yeah. That makes sense to me. I haven't been around as long as you, but since like 2016, 2017, it did seem like the whole community bet all of its potential scaling hopes on one thing, and if that failed, there was nothing else really being seriously considered. So it makes sense. Lightning Network to me, or a lot of credit layers, as far as scaling goes, I never 100% believed in, because I thought at some point you'd still need to settle, you'd still want security of the main chain, and if there's billions of people using this technology, all of that demand for settlement would still result in increased fees. Maybe I'm wrong on this though, but how do you interpret like the layer 2 to layer 1 settlement, even with sidechains, scaling the chain? Would we eventually need to increase block sizes, or how do you view like credit layers versus settling on the main chain?
The question of onboarding and offboarding, or lifting to L2 and dropping down to L1. I mean, Roger was saying this. Roger Ver was saying this in the earlier days. He was saying like you can't. There's not enough space to get everyone onto the Lightning Network with the small blocks. But the Lightning people had like a little razzle dazzle, flim flam like kind of show that they put on. I mean, I don't want to describe it like that, but they had all this stuff like channel factories, and they had like these things that they still have today. And at the time, all this was new, and so it kind of really seemed like they had a lot of technical credibility, and they should be given some latitude to prosecute this innovation, because if you know anything about innovation, it's like you can't just start on day one and say, oh, I have a problem. Oh, I need to build this bridge. And then you write down exactly what to do on the first try.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It doesn't work like
Yeah.
that. It's kind of like more like you have like a sculpture on one hand, then you have a blank piece of marble, and you just start making it look more similar.
Mm-hmm.
So no idea is finished on day one. That has never happened ever in the history of innovation. You know what I mean? You
100%.
you have like some ideas about why you think something will work. You start building the bridge, and it's always possible that you'll like at the 11th hour, the bridge will be like 99% finished, and then people will realize, oh no, like this entire area is built on like it looked like it was fine, but really there's a fault line, and there's like whatever, like a giant tile of granite that's gonna like move around. We can't bridge here, or if we do, we have to build like a completely different kind of bridge, or the bridge can only carry like so much weight. Not what we thought. You could always have something happen, at the end. But if you were waiting you would never build any bridges at all. You would never even start. If you were waiting, it's like you wait for ideal conditions, but there's never ideal conditions. You know what I mean? Everyone who ever, like when was it like J.R.R. Tolkien was writing like Lord of the Rings, like, and C.S. Lewis are writing like in the middle of like a war or something. You think, why would they take time to write a fiction, or when they're like, they don't, they might be unsafe, or they may not have food or something. Why weren't they? But no one would ever do anything. So what I'm trying to say is the Lightning Network idea was new, and they had just begun the process of doing it. And so everyone was kind of like, including me, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but it did seem like they were being overly pessimistic, and they were motivated. They were really just trying to get their block size idea through. And so, yeah. But now as time has gone on, it's actually clear that the idea is not going to work. And that the attempts to make it work are not a good use of time. The issue, the large block idea looks better and better, but even as a L2 drive chain, it then is shorn. Is all of the disadvantages it would have had can be, for example, the L2 chains can have their own higher block size, and then you can just add more chains when they fill up. And this is like the perfect way of making sure that we always have enough space for users. But if we have too much space, then the chain will die, the L2 chain will die, and then people will just move to. So now it's a decision like any other user experience decision, and it'll be just fine. So to me, that's the case. That's clearly the case. Lightning has had limited success, but as the thing that will scale Bitcoin to 8 billion users, thus securing its future. Because as we had just agreed, whoever reaches 8 billion users first will survive, and everyone else will die. So it's a matter of life or death. So as an avenue towards survival, Lightning Network is not going to work. And that's why people have these other things, ARC or whatever. And this is a pattern I've noticed many times, which is in Bitcoin, people say this and this, and then, this happened also with Ethereum. But people say this and this, and then someone would point out fundamental objection. Lightning has basically become like a shitcoin now, because this is what the shitcoins used to do, is they'd say, oh, we have this great new thing. It's called, Komodo gravity well. And then people would say that doesn't work. And then they'd say, well, we'll fix it with other thing. And then we'll fix it. It's like, now we'll fix it with L2, any prev out. We'll fix it with CTV. We'll fix it with TX hash. We'll fix it with ARC. We'll fix it with covenants, with blah, blah, blah. This whole thing is just a delusion.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That helps at all. But did that help? I hope.
Yeah, no, it did help. I'm trying to understand that point of view. And when I'm thinking about your perspective vision of the future, assuming like drive chains were activated, they got a lot of adoption, they were delivering value to people, how do you see the main L1 maintaining the hash rate if you're not having that consistent settlement demand, or you foresee
L2s are mined to L2s? So even though the miner doesn't have to do anything, they get all the transaction fee revenue from all the L2s.
Oh, interesting.
That is why the drive chain idea will survive and the others will not. It's one of many reasons. Many overlapping, I think, reasons that are all related in some deep sense, but it's kind of hard to illuminate why. But basically, if I'm right about 8 billion users eventually, tech stack, which I think we can see that over the last, like, ever since Satoshi first published this, there has been an explosion of interest from academia, tinkering programmers, just elite technical people. And there has been VC, and there's been plenty of funding for all kinds of people to try every weird blockchain idea under the sun, Ethereum, Solana, Base, people pushing the envelope and everything. So you see an explosion of, at least, I don't know if you would call all of it innovation. Certainly some of it is more likely to work than other things. But so I think if I'm right about this tech stack, 8 billion users eventually, that will be hundreds of billions of dollars per revenue. And if there's a world where that's all goes to the L1 miners in the Drivechain world versus a world where it goes to like the ARC supernode or LN Lightning Service Provider, LSP, or just like a sequencer or for Liquid, the transaction fees go to a wallet controlled by Blockstream. So should they get hundreds of billions of dollars per year, or should the miners? The miners will want that money for themselves. And even if push actually came to shove, the miners would just shut off all those other L2s to make sure that they got that money. But it won't even come to that because these other ideas are so bad that users don't even want to try.
Sure, yeah. Nobody really even has wanted to use Liquid very much. I don't see in like this current economic environment, political environment, how they wouldn't be vulnerable to regulation and potentially, if Bitcoin does become a threat to nation state money.
Many of them are weirdly centralized, where like some of the L2s like that are like a roll up or something that has a sequencer is just like one person's IP address or something. So I don't know if that, but I think we're going through a long period of time like where it's very easy to like promise a bunch of things and it's very hard to deliver the user. So the market is like figuring it out slowly. It's a lot like the .com. It's like the internet boom. There's tons of stuff is being tried. Eventually it will change the world, but like it's hard to know from the beginning, like, will it be Ask Jeeves or Google, or will it be will it be pets.com, or will it be Amazon, or will it's like kind of hard to tell for most people.
For sure, yeah.
24/7, 15 years, then it's a little bit easier to tell.
Yeah, you've been right about a lot of things. So I'm curious, and I wanted to ask you some specific questions on Drivechains. How do they interact with the main chain? Like how does it connect to like the main, say it's implemented on Litecoin's blockchain? You said it doesn't even require any of the regular nodes to update their software. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is true, but it's kind of like the reason there's controversy in the development is because people are like, I like what I'm doing on my computer and I don't want to be affected by like Luke Dash Jr. or whatever, Greg Maxwell or Peter Todd. They have their small block thing that eats up a certain amount of hard drive space. And they say, how can we let someone else increase the block size? Now I need to come up with more hard drive space. And so what I meant when I said that is the people who still want to use the chain the same way they were using it before, with exactly the same assumptions, security assumptions, and the same disk space and the same features, they can do that. So they do not need to upgrade if they don't want to. If you want to use the Drivechain feature, then you probably should upgrade, because for starters, it comes with like the interface to like click on the buttons to like actually use the thing. But it's not strictly necessary either. You could imagine someone using it just like people use Bitcoin without running a full node. Use these features without running. But the point is, the code is the thing that is keeping it on the rails. So if you want to use these features, you should use the software. Of course, many people won't anyway. It's even set up so that miners do not need to run any of the L2s, but the miners do need to run they do need to do something on L1 to activate the feature that is not being done. They need to track the BIP300 rules. Previously, this would be a pull request that changes the L1 software, but it's actually possible, this is what QSIF is, to just leave the L1 software exactly the way it is and add a second piece of software that just scans it's kind of like it takes the blocks from, Bitcoin Core or Litecoin full node, scans them a second time, So it's sort of twice as inefficient from the point of view of the computer, but it is more efficient in the sense that you do not have to touch anything in the the Litecoin full node. This always happens to me whenever I talk about Litecoin. I'm always accidentally
lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. So, assuming that happens and it's implemented, like on the Litecoin blockchain, could you could still fully validate and sync a full node without the extra piece of software, even if coins are being moved to the Drivechain, interacting over
this
there?
is true, but I should point out this is sort of a controversial statement that I make, even though this is kind of a concerning thing, because to me it's like obvious that it's true. It depends on what you mean. Okay, so there are some people like Luke Dash Jr. who hold a view that I think is totally wrong and makes no sense. But Luke's view is that if you do not run the latest version of the full node software that is published on the internet, then you are totally blind to everything that's happening. And Bitcoin might as well be a central bank digital currency, and Bitcoin has failed, and Bitcoin is dead, and all this other stuff. So he has this black and white view that as soon as you're one version behind, you might as well not be running any software at all. I think that's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense at all. The other thing is the difference between the SPV node and the full node, I think is really totally misconceived and very, like, the people who are thinking about it, I don't understand what they're talking about at all. So for example, the SPV node is a node that only syncs the full node has the whole blockchain history. Every transaction is downloaded to your computer. Your computer checks every rule against every transaction. That's the full node. That's like Bitcoin Core. The SPV node is something that just takes 4.4 megabytes per year of the headers. For Litecoin, it would be approximately 4 times that amount or whatever. But so small amount, 4.4 megabytes per year, which is nothing, of the headers. Takes the headers of the chain, so it's like basically the part that has the proof of work, but then the actual body of the block, which contains all the transactions, you only download those transactions if they affect you. And you can say, if someone paid me money, they can send me this thing. I can see that the transaction has been included in a block. I do not know that it's followed every rule, but I have a reasonable expectation that miners would not be building on this chain, and it would not be syncing everywhere to everyone, every block explorer, everything. Miners would not be building on the chain if it were invalid, because some other people, every full node would have rejected it if it was invalid, and so the miners would also have.
I see.
So this is the case where someone is making an assumption about is my block likely to be in the longest chain? This is the question that the full node answers. The full node says it is in the longest chain that I'm aware of, out of all the chains that this node has seen. So there is something called an eclipse attack where someone, but I don't want to, I'm already making this a little too confusing than it maybe needs to be. But what I'm trying to say is the full node also has the assumption that the blockchain could reorg at any time. And to me, that is the same as what every soft fork adds. Every soft fork says, maybe there's a soft fork that you don't know about that enforces some rule that you haven't heard about yet. Right? Because it's not like we're not like infallible, omniscient beings, and we know whenever a new soft fork is proposed, we know about it instantly, and our computer knows about it, and whatever. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So there could always be, you could be running what you think is a full node, and then, so I don't know. I hope that maybe this is too confusing for.
No,
is this making any sense? But so what I'm saying is, you sync the node, but you're theoretically like one version behind. You don't have the new drive. This is what the question that you asked me was. You said, what if I have update, but I haven't added the Drivechain part? Can I still sync? I say this question doesn't even really have any meaning, because you can run what you think is the latest version, but you don't know what version the miners are running. They could have their own version that they know about that actually enforces other rules. They probably don't. But the reason that they probably don't is the same reason why they're not going to reorg any Drivechain blocks that don't have no negative impact on any other users. It's all the same question of.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess my question wasn't that clear. I was really trying to think, like long term, if you could take the example better, if it was like people running only SPV nodes versus full nodes.
Yes.
If everyone was sort of trusting and reliant on SPV nodes, at some point you could imagine that that layer of trust is so ingrained that nobody knows what the
if any of the blocks contain an error or not. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I certainly don't advocate that everyone run, as you say, everyone run SPV. No, people should run. What the full node does is it gives you a certain amount of assurance. So you should vary that with your need. So if you are a payment processor like BitPay, I mean, it's the cost benefit of running the full node.
Yeah, you
A
run
total blowout, right? Of course you would run the full node. So if you are a regular person and you are getting, if someone is going to send you Litecoin, and you are going to pay, you have a briefcase with like $100,000 worth of cash, and it's probably worth it for you. If you're this is a $100,000 transaction, you should probably have the full node. You should probably have something going on where you have multiple different computers. You know what I mean? You're going to meet the person in a cafe. You don't want them to like hack your computer, or you're going to want to have something. Maybe you on your phone is going to dial out to your own desktop computer back at your house that has the full node. You come up with something, because I'm going to let this person walk away with a briefcase full of cash, and all I'm going to get is a little thing on my computer that says you have a transaction, 2 confirmations or something. So
exactly.
If instead you and your friend go out to eat, and it's a friend that you've known for 20 years, and he's your neighbor, he lives next door, and he's going to pay you some Litecoin on a mobile wallet, and he has an SPV wallet, you have an SPV wallet,
you don't care.
So the idea of the fetishization and the kind of like black and white thinking of like, we must have a full node. As soon as we leave the sacred full node, it's like burst in the flames, is absurd. For a start, when we onboard new users, anyone who asks a new user to start by syncing a full node is just a fool.
And I think
give them the SPV node wallet first.
It's so complicated, complex, and requires such a deep level of understanding to process all this. I think most people listening and most people new to the space, it's not reasonable to think that they will understand this. And
very important point. I mean, I hate to keep interrupting you, but you've hit on an extremely important point, which is the full node doesn't do anything unless the person understands what it's doing.
Exactly.
It makes no difference. It might as well just be a box that just waits for like a day and then says you have a full node. This is exactly the important point, is that the full node, it's kind of like you have a full node, but it doesn't display anything on the screen. It's like the full node, what it displays on the screen, it must go into the person's brain. And so if people don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, then it's a sham. The whole thing's a sham. So that's a very important point that you have hit on, which is that if people don't understand what the full node is doing, then it's not actually helping anyone. It may help by backing up the blockchain in one spot temporarily until the person thinks like, I don't know what this is for, and just closes the full node, and then it can anyone else. So
yeah, exactly. So as far as like security risks or any of the counter arguments that are made against Drivechains, do you see any trade-offs doing this, or basically you have the view that there really is no reason why we shouldn't integrate these because of all the potential upside in driving adoption and providing value to end users is extremely high. I mean, I've looked at a lot of your work on Drivechains, looked through Layer 2 Labs. It seems like the applicational capacity is very high, and that it would actually help drive a lot of use cases, adoption, and innovation. So do you see any?
I mean, competition, to me, competition is the one true God also. So it's like, we don't want a world where we have the developers, the Bitcoin developers or the Litecoin developers even. We really want lots of different people to be able to just say, you know what, this person said they're not going to get to it until Monday, but I want to do it now, and I'm just going to fork the project, and I'm going to ship my own Drivechain L2, and it's going to have the feature on Saturday, because we want like Elon Musk type people who are just moving the schedule up, right? So sure. I don't really see any trade-offs, to be honest with you. I think the upside is huge, the downside is basically zero. Of course, there's always some trade-offs in the sense of everything requires like our limited human attention and blah blah blah, but yada yada yada, whatever else I'm supposed to say. But every soft fork that is based on an opcode, you can later do a soft fork that just says we ban all use of this opcode ever, And then if anyone put any money into it would be like frozen. So that would be bad for them. But they would restore the network exactly to the state that it was in before. So, and no one is going to, when Drivechain first comes out, or when anything first comes out, Lightning, people are not going to immediately put their life savings into the new opcode. No one will do that.
Sure.
And if they do, then that's their own, risk. They do their own risk, cost benefit, risk reward calculation like anyone else. So it's like, it really is absurd. And I think part of what's going on is that this does change who is considered authoritative in the developer community of the coin.
Oh, 100%.
All
Yeah.
the more reason to do it as quickly as possible. I think the benefits might actually be like millions of times higher than I had thought. Because if you think about it, what if someone has a brilliant idea today, but there's some new person? They're like some 15-year-old at MIT. You know what I mean? Like there's some genius, but no one has heard of them. And they have, or even better is the 15-year-old genius who's not at MIT, right? Because they have no credential, but they have the idea, So what are they supposed to do? Write a BIP, launch their own altcoin? All of these things are a huge amount of work.
For sure.
All of them are political. If they launch an altcoin, people are going to accuse them of being a scammer, and they're going to maybe even call the SEC and all this other stuff on this person, And if the BIP process takes years, and people will still call you a scammer and other mean things, right? So you can even do everything right and have it be very nice. If your idea is too good, it becomes politically inconvenient for everyone else. You know what I mean? You're going to show up the ideas that are on offer if your idea is too good. So actually the barrier to entry on innovation, even though there has been enormous innovation, the barrier to entry is very, very high. Even though we've seen all this stuff, Coinbase, I was talking about Ethereum to Solana to Base. I'm talking about this pipeline, similar like the Bitcoin to Litecoin to Feathercoin, Dustcoin, whatever. All this stuff that's not real innovation. But even all of that, which is beneficial in the sense of just people trying new things, all of this is really hung up on the idea that you cannot get your idea out there because the stigma of the altcoin is very great. And it's like live by the fork, die by the fork. So if you have a new idea, then how do you if you have a good idea, how do you say, I really believe that this idea is good versus someone who's just going to say, who wants to just altcoin pump and dump people?
Exactly. Yeah.
With the sidechain though, you say, I am not going to get anything out of this idea. This immediately puts you in a different category as far as people's attention. People will say, oh, it's a new Bitcoin project or a new Litecoin project where the person has just offered it to you for free. Sort of a bad deal in one sense for the developer because they're not getting anything. And also it's a good deal because actually now the developer can say with credibility, this is an actual idea that is good. And I believed in it enough to pour my own scarce time into it. So you should give it at least 5 or 10 seconds of your time.
For sure.
And then people will do that. And so that is great because this sorts the list of attention. And then when you have people do that, they'll start talking about it and they'll say, and now the idea is off to the races. So if you have a good idea, now it can actually break out. Whereas today, I don't know what someone would do if they had a good idea. What would you, what do you think you would do if you suddenly thought of a great idea that no one else was doing in the blockchain space? Something
thinking about it, it's really hard because there is this stigma. I think the speculative market that we've entered, we've basically transitioned the crypto market into a casino. I mean, most of the money that's driving this space and prices up are really pump and dump. So it gives a bad image to anyone who's actually trying to deliver something of value to the space that can progress it forward. So it's hard to overcome that stigma that's been created. And then you're going to get if you try to do it on an open source project like Bitcoin, you're going to get shut out as well. So it's really hard. I don't know, maybe because you've had so much success and you have credibility, you've been right about a lot of the ideas early on and then seen them develop later. I would assume you have a lot of credibility, at least. I know it's hard to overcome the.
I do actually, and a lot of the creme de la creme. I'm very popular among people. Wouldn't believe the people who I get invited to certain parties, and then the way I'm treated on Twitter is like it's sort of like a very funny version of that sometimes. But I sort of am a glutton for punishment because I'm a very critical person. As you know, I'll just say, well, this is not, I'll just go on Twitter and say this is a bad idea, like whatever. People don't like that all the time. For a while, people were telling me, for years, people were telling me, you have to stop criticizing Lightning because it's hurting the adoption of because people would come up to me and they say, I know that you are right. We need to get your correct ideas out there. This had many, many, many different bars and after parties of different Bitcoin conferences. Many people have told me this. All kinds of people who would be on stage at a big Bitcoin conference, they have come up to me in a bar or whatever, and they have said, you have to stop criticizing Lightning because it's just it will make, it's just like, I don't know exactly what language they use, but basically what they're saying is discretion is a better part of valor, and, go along to get along. This hand washes that, that
Yeah, it's really tough. I think the larger picture, it's similar to, like entrepreneurship in a lot of developed countries now. The government or political structures making it way more risky to start a new business, and it's kind of similar to what's happening with what we were talking about in Bitcoin. But I think Litecoin's interesting because, like you were saying before, there's like a central figurehead that has all of the respect, and if he says something that's in favor of a new project, the community will support it and listen to them and just trust the judgment. And so Charlie's in an interesting position because he's still around. He is the figurehead. He was able to push MWeb, even though it might not have as great a privacy as what you'd need in the future. At least he was able to get that done just basically on his own with almost no funding, and it has gotten a decent amount of adoption, even faster than the Lightning Network, in terms of like coins held on that. So have you talked to Charlie at all about
I haven't, although of course I know of Charlie, and I've seen him, like, as the years go by, I sort of like run into him once or twice. I don't really know him that well, but I think you're 100% correct that this is an advantage of having one, for lack of a better word, one leader or one centralized person, that someone actually has responsibility for the project. Someone says like, oh, I will get credit if the idea turns out to be popular, and I will get blamed if the idea turns out to be a mistake. And then this is someone who actually takes responsibility for the decision. Whereas in Bitcoin, the sort of misunderstanding of decentralization leads everyone to not want to be responsible, and that is a disadvantage because that is a situation where no one cares about taking the best ideas as rapidly as possible. Where that is the explicit policy. I mean, it sounds like I'm just kind of complaining when I say that, but I'm just trying to make it clear to everyone that if you really think about it, and if you listen to what they actually say on GitHub and on Twitter, the official explicit policy, the actual reasoning and motivation and intent of the process is not, it's not like we want the best ideas as quickly as possible. It is like, we want to not break Bitcoin. We don't want to do anything controversial. We don't, these are like explicit things that are explicitly said. And we don't want anyone to be responsible for making a decision. So stuff is like referred to like committees, which is exactly how the CIA like destroys organizations. I'm not saying that this is a CIA thing, but I am saying it's known that when you have a committee, then people don't, there's like less stuff gets done because everyone can just look the other way, and the responsibility and the blame and the credit is all diffused among different people. Whereas if one person, so that's just another long-winded way of me saying that you are right, that it is better that Charlie actually takes responsibility for the project, and he says, I'm the person that you would blame if this statement I'm making later turns out not to be true. So that's the thing.
Yeah, and I'll be talking to him on Friday. I'd love to get his opinion on if he has one, if he's looked into it, because I think
it's usually tweeted that like in a positive way about eventually putting Drivechains on Litecoin. I have to say the QSIF software is we just like so we started switching it over this last few months, and it is not like completely. I think it doesn't like work on there's like a Windows bug right now or something. So, but I would say like we had all this stuff working before, and then the QSIF switchover, we have like a lot of it. We just will like, it's like in transition at this exact moment. But I mean, we're working on it every day. You can go on GitHub and see people working on it every day. So but once that's done, that will be a version of Drivechain that does not involve any pull request to the Litecoin software. And you just, miners and other people who want to run a full node, just download this activator and they run it next to the Litecoin full node. And that should be pretty easy. So the important thing to do would be to get 51% hash rate, or ideally 100% of the hash rate, to agree to run the activator, and to, it is important that people understand why they are doing what they're doing also. So, the really important thing would be if people understood what is the, what is the activator doing? What is BIP300 doing? What is
there any basic breakdown or information where we can find that detailed in like a paper on Drivechains or on Layer 2 Labs website?
Oh, well, you mean there's the BIP300 BIP text, which is up to date. And then there is a BIP300QSIF.com. I have the sort of, that is about the QSIF idea. So yeah, you should be able to find that. Probably the GitHub is slightly better to, so yeah, that should be up to date. And that's what it is. And it's not really even that long, I mean, it's not exactly easy reading, whatever. It's not, whatever, Harry Potter or something, but it's not like there's so many people have this strong opinion on Drivechain, and they clearly have never read this BIP, not a word. Sure. Many people will admit that they haven't read a word of it, and you just think like, really, like, can you just like scroll up and down so people can see like this is how long it is? It's like I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah, well, that's like, it seems like human nature. You see it all the time in other industries. You even saw it with Bitcoin first, right, where people dismissed it without even reading the code or have these strong opinions against it without understanding at all the value proposition. So it's probably similar with Drivechains, but it'd be cool. I'll ask him if he's read through this. He probably has. I would assume Charlie has.
And I have changed it from time to time. So I did update it recently. So it's up to date, and it links to the QSIF activator at the bottom, I think, reference implementation or whatever. So that is very useful. And there it is. So that is the thing that you would put next to a Litecoin full node to turn it into to activate BIP300. So
gotcha.
There's no need to do any pull requests to. This does assume, I'm not sure, I haven't looked into this, but yeah, this is like this like block subscribe ZMQ thing. So I don't know if Litecoin has stayed up to date with Bitcoin and also has this thing.
It's pretty close.
Then there will be. You really won't need to do any modification. We should obviously test, and there might be. Excuse me. There might be things related to like the different block time and stuff that maybe we have to go through and edit. Yes. But basically it should not. I'm sure there'll be some engineering involved, but in theory, if the Litecoin full node is very similar to the latest version of Bitcoin Core, which is what this works with, it may work, right out of the box. I don't know. Who knows? So
yeah, it should be minor modifications, but that would be really cool. I'll get his opinion and maybe can help push the community, because we just started doing this like a couple weeks ago, but we're getting a lot of support from the community with these streams. I
think you like, okay, because remember, I really believe one coin will win, and I have always believed it would be the sidechain. Bitcoin would be the sidechain coin, and the sidechain coin would win. So if there's a lot of people who think like me, then I think you should go. I mean, I don't want to like be too much of a salesman about it, because I'm like an academic scientist type person. But it's like, what is the plan for Litecoin to take over Bitcoin? I think it must be some combination, because to make it the number one and win and be worth, a $200 trillion market cap or whatever. It must be to get more innovation, more and adoption being one type of innovation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
must just be like keep changing the idea to better match the world, the changing world, and hope it just hits like with enough overlap to so. Bitcoin, every mistake made by Bitcoin is like a gift to the Litecoin community,
Sure.
every other altcoin community. So it's like if you investigate this matter and you think, yeah, I'm right about all this, you should be doing all this. And the other thing is we have a QSIF for opcat also. I'm not sure if you want to do that, but really, if you listen to what I was saying, Litecoin should just do all the opcodes. I mean, maybe you have to be careful about how different, how much Bitcoin Core diverges from Litecoin, because you want to still
Mm-hmm.
continue to parasitically feast off of the development done in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
But with the QSIF thing, now you don't have to modify Litecoin to adopt these BIPs, all these BIPs, you know, TX hash, opcat, whatever. So I would just say, like, do code a QSIF version of all these covenant BIPs, even though I think they're all useless, honestly, but I think I also think they're all harmless. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I think you should try all these soft forks, build all this developer like foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, we'll be Layer 2 Labs has already built, and we will still be building. We have enough like sidechains for planetary scale, so for all 8 billion people. I have published all about this, so I have we can talk about that if you want. But also the Zcash like clone, like for privacy, EVM compatible L2 sidechain, like a clone of the latest version of Ethereum. A Namecoin thing, a bit assets thing for just like issuing like tokens and stuff. Of course, everyone's doing that type of thing, but it's on its own L2. It has its own little like DEX where you just click buttons to issue the tokens. So we have, the crazy thing is we have already built this, and it was all working before, but then I decided to switch everything over to QSIF, which is much better. And then it's like kind of a little bit of a grind because there's different software servers, and stuff has to ask the right question to each thing, and you know, it's how the mining script build the block the right way. It's just like a little bit of a grind to get it all to work with the new thing. You know, it's not kind of easy to make something. So,
But it will be done relatively soon, I would imagine.
We're putting all these L2s out. You know, that's what the company is doing. So if you want to help do that, you can join our Telegram, and I'm doing that, like, you know, come hell or high water. But anyway, so I'm doing it and giving it all away, and we're going to make the prediction markets, decentralized prediction markets L2, and I have I have a lot of ideas. If you read the Bitcoin Hive Mind site, you will see that I have tons and tons of ideas, and the most important of which are in both of these two videos. One of those videos is only 20 minutes long, but the poly market has only scratched the surface of what is possible with prediction markets. So I wish that they would continue. They should continue to take my great ideas. That would be great, including these ideas here with the multidimensional prediction market. But this is going to be very difficult to do in a way that the user can understand. The point is, I'm going to be putting out all this software. So I'm just going to be like doing all this anyway. So if you're Litecoin and you want to
implement it,
I think you should just like jump on every opportunity to take advantage of any mistakes made by BTC. I think every mistake made by BTC is a gift to you. So you should just think, okay, is this a mistake or are they right? You know, like what is Peter Todd's case against Drivechain, which is like this horrendous gobbledygook mess of self-contradiction and just like, and I had written this post, and I have this post where I just go through every single like sentence and paragraph, and what he said is wrong. It's like embarrassing.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree with you.
Everyone should read that for themselves and decide if they think. Peter Todd thought that he was on stage last at Baltic Honey Badger. This was 3 or 4 months into, we had paid him money to write his technical review of Drive. This is after hating on the idea for years and years and years. We're back in 2023. After we said, listen, Peter, you've been hating on this idea. Why don't you write like a report on what it is about the idea that you don't like? Right? That's the kind of person I am. I'm hiring him to do this report. We had already paid him. It's like half now, half upon completion, right? So we had paid him the first half. We're months in. He's on stage at Baltic Honey Badger, and he says, well, this is just an idea. No one has ever written code to do this about Drive. So he had no idea that the Zcash sidechain was like 3 years old at that point or something. They had a graphical user interface. So that's the extent of the criticism. Criticism is a sham, and this is just like people who are clinging to some version of Bitcoin that involves Lightning or something. I don't know. It's just Lightning is like a mental disease at this point. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will push for this within the community. I think what's unique about the Litecoin community and the group of people, I guess, speculating on the chain or own the chain is that they are really focused on adoption statistics and long term. One of the few communities I've noticed within crypto that's actually focused on really establishing monetary network effects, and have pointed out that the path for Litecoin's growth in the past has always been higher Bitcoin fees, right? Just substitution to a new chain, and then once Litecoin users or Bitcoin users get priced out, this is the wrong chart. I have Bitcoin fees here in blue, Litecoin transactions. I'll add it real quick. But this is what has been ongoing since 2017, since you pointed out, like when the Bitcoin community sort of stalled out, Litecoin has been gaining. And if you look at this data and inspect it, it's not just speculative demand. It's really like daily users that have been continuously being adopted.
Sergey, a bit refill. Bit refill is kind of like a bit pay.
But more international.
Yeah. And I was shocked when he was talking. I think it was maybe it was 2021 when we were at this conference, and it was like we were at breakfast or something, and he started telling me this stuff about, like Litecoin is like I don't remember what he said at that time, but whatever it was, I was like, what, really? I was like amazed.
Yeah, well, generally,
Monero are focused on actually pleasing the people who use the software. And you see that this is tied with what I said before, which is if you use the software and you have no idea what it's doing, then you're not really using the software, and it's it's a fake. So I think this is this is a smart thing to bet all your chips on, is pleasing the people who use the software, because everything else I think is going to end up being an illusion.
Yeah, it is a delusion. Speculation should net out over a long enough time frame, right? If they have no reason to own the coin in the first place, other than price go up, it's no better than owning a meme coin or
the price goes up. This is a battery that discharges all of its energy, right? Because as the price goes up, it's harder for it to go up another 10x.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you're in it for speculation reason. Well, once enough people are in it for speculation reason, then what can only happen is that it can then collapse, and then the people who are in it for speculation reason are definitely out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Whereas if you are an actual user, the price is going down. Now it's a 20% off sale or something, and you think this
exactly for sure. And I think Litecoin has a good monetary network. It's at a good level of adoption and has higher network effects than a lot of these other altcoins, despite the price being lower, right? So it's like doing 10 times as much real economic volume than Dogecoin, and it's 10 times lower in market cap or something. So if it can continue to please end users, add more features, and I want to go through all this stuff on the Bitcoin Hive Mind website myself, and then personally familiarize myself with it.
Scroll down. I wrote these sequences. So there they are, the PM sequence. And each of those is like a few pages long, but if you go into 2 and 3, get into what Polymarket has still not done, that I think is,
well, it's a huge potential market too, and if they haven't implemented, that's opportunity to get this adopted at a higher degree than Polymarket.
This is the multidimensional thing. So I can explain some of it. I'm one of the few people in the world that cares about this at all. But this is going to be. I remember I was saying prediction markets like 12 years ago. I was saying that's going to be the next big thing. So this is going to be the next. This is going to be the next big prediction market thing. And what this is basically letting you do is like, well, it's hard to say. Okay, I'll go through this example. But this is from like 2014 or something. So the dates you have to keep in mind. I wrote this paper in like 2014, like 10 years ago. So of course, Hillary was going to be. This is the basic. So I'm going to improve on this, but this is the basic thing: is that, well, because remember I'm writing in 2014. It was clear that Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee, and she would probably, at the time, it seemed like she would probably win from 2014. So I was writing, okay, let's have a prediction market on, will Hillary Clinton win the election in 2016 in the future? So 1 and 2 is yes or no. But then I said, you can change it so that you can make a trivial modification so that for each electoral college vote she wins. So like in the top case, it could be like it pays $1 if she wins, 0 if she doesn't win.
Mm-hmm.
Or the reverse, if you bet on no, pays $1 if she doesn't win. And I'm just going to use $1 to make it easier for everyone to understand. And then the lower one would be like something like there's 538 electoral colleges votes, so you get 1/538th of $1 for each electoral college vote she gets. So now the market price is going to trade on like how many. It will, instead of just flipping, instead of being like a percentage of the overall victory, it will be like you can now see how will it be a total blowout, for example. Will you win all 538, or will she just barely win, or will it just be the swing states or whatever? So this is the base case. This is what is already being done. And now we can continue. And this is actually, we can skip this one. This is a simple thing of just saying more categories. Okay, here we go. This is where we really get going. What you can do is, instead of splitting the market into yes, no, 2 states, you can split it into, and the 20-minute video, I have, like a whole speech with slides about this, but so people can watch that if they care more about this, but I'm going to try to explain it now. You have 2 yes or no questions, and you have the states 1, 2, 3, 4. And the way they are set up is you only win the dollar if both of the events happen. This is called the joint probability statistics. And this gives you everything that you had before, because you can sum up the 2. It's really better if people watch the video, because in the video I have like a cool way of explaining it with dice. It's probably great, but this gives you everything you had before, because you can add up the probabilities. This is called the marginal probability, because they're written in the margin. So now you can see how likely is it that in April 2015, in the future, the unemployment rate will have been low. So you won't know what the unemployment rate is in April 2015 until afterwards. But the point is that market will resolve in the future when the Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes this thing about whether or not the economy is good. Then the market will resolve. And you don't know if this Jobs Act, this is that I just made up in 2015, you don't know if they will pass this yet. Because remember, I wrote this piece of paper in like 2014. So this is all stuff in the future. You can add up into the margins and get what you had before, which is the likelihood of the Jobs Act being passed and the likelihood of the unemployment rate being great. But what you get in this case is you also get the relationship between the 2. And that is what this colored diagram in the sort of the middle. That if they're green, then there's a positive relationship. No means no, and yes means yes. And they clump up on this line, line that's downward sloping, the probabilities. And if there's an inverse relationship, they clump up on the other sloping line. Whereas if you were to pass this Jobs Act, it would prevent the unemployment rate from dropping. It'd have a computer effect.
Gotcha.
And then no relation, then it just kind of like has like there's no clumping on a line. They're just kind of what they are what they are. And this has enormous implications for all kinds of huge decisions. Like, what would the stock price be if we fired our CEO? And what would if the Fed policy were this? What would nominal GDP be, or what would inflation be in the future? And also even crazier things like, if we nominate this candidate, if we nominate Biden, what is our likelihood of winning the election? If we nominate Kamala, what is our likelihood of winning the election? And so this is like mind-blowing powers of like the top decisions of the world, and can be recast as these simple markets. This to create a market like this is actually easier than to create 2 separate markets, because the liquidity in the market scoring rule is pooled, and it is a log n of the number of states. So 2 different log 2 plus log 2 versus log 4.
That makes sense.
Add more dimensions, but the difficult part is the user experience and explaining it to the user. So that is why I'm trying to build a front end user interface that makes this easier to understand. You can see that I had already started that if you go to the Bitcoin Hive Mind screenshots. But so then if you keep scrolling down, you see like I have all kinds. You can just keep pushing the envelope on this into all kinds of directions, and you can make so if you keep going, this is another thing you can bet. You can keep this up and have the 2 continuous ones. So you can bet on something else while also betting against the Bitcoin US dollar exchange rate. And now one of you is betting in US dollars, or in this case, you're betting in shares of the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the S&P 500. So now you can bet on things that will happen far in the future, but you still you're not penalized for, like what will the change in the currency's appreciation over that time. So you can just start going. You can just keep stacking it up. Like you can add more and more dimensions. You can have like 8, 9, 10, or whatever. So like this is like, do you pass Obamacare? What is the life expectancy or something like that? So this is only like okay. So now I have one with 3 dimensions. Like you're gonna bet in the like what are the decisions of the corporation. This is kind of just to show off, and this is not the true application of this. The sweet spot. Because this is a paper, so I want to like cover all the bases. But the sweet spot is really a really high impact decision that a lot of people might know a lot about and might affect a lot of people, but that for some reason the information is not getting out. So the perfect application is if we nominate this person, will they win the election? But another one is, should we fire our CEO? Because the CEO is very good at hiding his flaws, and an imperfect CEO is very hard to get rid of. But there's probably someone in line, second in line. That person would create the market anonymously, and they say, should we replace the CEO with whatever, Paul Sztorc or something, joke, of course. But it's like if you do that, and then it will say what that would actually look like is, what would the stock price be in next year with the existing CEO, and what would the stock price be with the replacement CEO? And now everyone's trading on this in Polymarket, and now it's literally a fact that the market believes, that the people believe there would be arbitrage. You know what I mean? Like it's like a kind of a law of physics that if it's the case that replacing the CEO is trading at a higher price, if you actually did that, the real stock price would move up to that amount.
So for sure. Yeah.
The current stock price today would be like in the middle of like this too, if it actually mattered that the CEO sucked. Some CEOs are great; it should never be replaced. But that's the whole point: is that this? How do you know which from which? So this is now a huge thing, because of course the corporation has a fiduciary obligation to do anything to maximize the shareholder.
True.
And now you have a way of getting rid of every suboptimal CEO and every suboptimal politician. So it's like, that's the sweet spot of this idea.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's kind of is giving me like Minority Report vibes. Right? If prediction markets are...
It's basically, a prediction market is kind of like a walkie-talkie where you build it and you turn it on, or like that movie Frequency. You turn it on and you can now get a message from the future. That's kind of what it is. Of course, nothing can reveal the future, like literally. But what the prediction market does is everyone's hidden knowledge about the future that they secretly know, but that they can't say. Because I can maybe explain it like a little bit. I try to explain it in the video, which I think people should watch. But it's like, what you are doing is basically, if you think that like the election of let's take an example where you think the Democratic Party should win, just hypothetically, in 2028, and that would be good for the unemployment rate or something. What you do is you place a bet on 3 of the 4 states, and in a certain way that there's like a formula for this that the software will know. And that bet is you spend a certain amount of money, and you will lose all of that money so remember, the scenario was Democrat is installed into power and the unemployment rate is good. If the thing that you wanted to happen happens, and then the opposite thing happens, then you lose all of your money. So the Democrat wins the election and the unemployment rate is worse, then you lose all of your money.
It's like a laddered bet.
Yeah, if it is kind of like a parlay, yeah, in a way. And it's like if instead the Democrat is elected, the economy is good, then you win some percentage, whatever. It depends on the market price. It depends on what the odds were. Maybe everyone already knew that would happen, and you won't win very much. You know what I mean? That's like the odds are very. It's like you're betting on whatever, some really good team to. So you don't win that much. But the interesting thing is what happens if the counterfactual never happens. This is where it's not like a parlay at all. If the You say, okay, listen, we should elect Ron Paul and it'll be great, or we should put the Democratic Party in power and the unemployment rate will be great. If the other thing happens, if the Republican Party wins, then basically you get all of your money back. You may even get more money. There's two ways of doing the bet. There's one where you deliberately say, I have no idea which party will win, but I know that one party would be better for the economy. And there's a different type of a bet where you say that you basically say, there's no way, you can say something that goes something like this. It says, most people have no idea that I'm right. So I know that they won't take my advice, but if they took my advice, this would happen. And in that case, you win. You have more risk, but you win more money if you. Yeah. So if you say they're not going to do it, and then when you win more money by them not taking your advice. So it's basically you bet that the Republicans will win, and then you hedge the bet by saying if the Democrats win, the economy will be really well. This is a totally fictional scenario. I just want to. I'm just trying to pick something that people will get some kind of realistic
relate to.
Talking about. And so I'm not sure why, but you asked something and I wanted to explain it like that. So like what happens. So it's like, this is like a new way of talking where you can just, anyone who's insincere, because people have beliefs about the future, but some people don't really have a belief. Like some people can say, oh, it's all going to hell in a handbasket. But are they going to go out and short the S&P 500 for cash? Or are they going to say, people have all these beliefs about this or OPEC conspiracies, but are they going to buy oil futures or spot price of oil? Like people, when push comes to shove and they have to put real money on the line, then everyone's just kind of like, well, the world's actually a complicated place, and I don't know everything that's happening in the world. So this is how we get that message from the future, because we can't literally get information that's not. So if you have a prediction market on a coin flip, that will not help because no one knows how the coin's going to land. So even though all the information about the future is aggregated, it would still be just not. So the walkie-talkie would not be saying very much. But there are many cases in the world where plenty of people knew. Those people who worked for Biden in the White House, they must have known that and on the debate stage that something would happen. You know what I mean? That either he'll be replaced or the Democrats will lose. Or some other weird thing. So the point is, we can carve all that out, and then what they know, what the specialists know, then everyone can know, and that's kind of
I see what your point is. Yeah, there's always somebody that has an edge in having more information than others, but these prediction markets will reveal that to the public,
and it casts those people out for knowing more. So it also gives you an incentive to know the world and then bet on them, which is perfect.
That's awesome. And you're working on this right now, or it's already developed, or?
I had a version that worked. I wanted to do ground up rewrite in Rust. If there's any great Rust developers, then please, because there's not enough time. It's not enough hours in the day. But I would like to. This is like a very unique thing where, for some reason, even though this prediction market stuff has been around for a while, Robin Hanson has been around for a while, all this stuff has been around, but this is still something where it's a great idea that people have not yet totally hit on. Although I think a poly market will eventually discover this type of idea, but it is tough to get it into a format that the end user, the trader, actually understands. So that's what I'm kind of working on the front end, because it's going to be pretty important. But on the other hand, when money is on the line, people they start to get really smart. And you can always have run like a test version of the software with play money and figure out what would happen if, and then people would think, then that's when people will say, okay, I know that these things will happen. One of these things is going to happen when Biden goes out. Either Biden will die, or he'll go out on the debate stage and they'll be replaced, or the Democratic Party will lose. So then you kind of like, I think if we built the right front-end tools, then people would understand it. And that is the key. So that is a goal of mine, to do that, as soon as possible. If we get, I think I would also be open to like a hackathon or something. I think that would maybe help, because now the ideas are like way more recognized. And so what's needed is for people to just bang something out. And I've done a lot of stuff. There's the old Truthcoin repository on GitHub, and there is software Bitcoin Hive Mind does have software, which is a version of like Bitcoin 10.99 or something. It's like so old. It's like very, very old. So that won't work. And now we have I mean, it might work, but it's like I think the better thing is to do the ground up rewrite in Rust, because we have the large block sidechain L2 ground up rewrite in Rust. We have that already. So I think it's just a better idea. But maybe I don't know. Maybe the better idea is to just like push something out the door as quickly as possible. I don't know.
I think that's a good idea. What I think is, if the community does support and can talk to Charlie about the idea of Drivechains, we have this bounty program that one community member set up, and it's like partner with the Litecoin Foundation. If Drivechains can be talked about, discussed, and potentially implemented, I think it'd be cool to set up bounties for all the, your ideas that already have shown proven demand in the real world, like Polymarket.
I agree. I mean, and of course, like I view it as part of the Layer 2 Labs mission, so I would even fund the bounty, and in addition to like trying to help, explain people like exactly what I think should be done, and we have all this code already. The nice thing is the R code that I wrote, it is useless as actual blockchain software, but that's the whole point, is that it is just like the novel features. So actually, I think if anyone and it has lots of tests and like demos and stuff. So if people wanted to just, and now with the LLMs and like the AI, you can like almost just like ask the LLM, just like take this thing and put it into this other thing. And I don't know, I'm not sure, but I do think that we want a lot of people to push stuff out quickly, and I will help do that with my time and even money. And so I'm totally interested in doing that. An interesting thing about Drivechain is really the L2s. Like the L2s are not loyal to any L1. They don't even really know what's going on in the L1. So if we build a really great L2, like it's not like, let's say I build I'm working on this for Bitcoin, right now, and I build a great L2 for Drivechain for BTC. Litecoin can just take the exact same project and just like point it at the different QSIF enforcer on Litecoin instead of on, but it won't, like, it just needs to know about like the deposits and withdrawals and stuff, and the enforcer does that on L1. So the interesting thing is that the L2s don't care what L1 they're on. So in a way, we should all just be, there's a selfless sense in which we should all just work on them for the benefit of mankind, and a sense in which they will probably be very optimal because lots of different people may be using them. But there's also a selfish sense in which you can just say, well, listen, like, like share and share alike, if I'm going to like make this L2s for BTC, you could just take them all for Litecoin, and that's fair game. And then we can make one, and then when we make one, it's like anyone can use it. So it's like a little bit more of a kind of a strategy element. Like, okay, let's focus on these great pieces, and then that helps whichever coin has the most adoption. You know what I mean? If everyone has the same features, then it's only adoption. Yeah. So if Litecoin is already going to bet on all the adoption things, then it's a kind of a complementary strategy to equalize all of the tech stack for everyone. I'm not sure if this is making any sense, but it's like,
no, it is. It makes sense to me, and I think because Litecoin has these network effects right now, if we were to try to push these types of things, people would experiment with them, and it would have another leg up in that adoption lead. I also kind of agree with you. I like the point you made that the L2 users probably won't even care, and that's how I imagine the future. Like, people, I thought over time, would arbitrage security for cost between like chains like Bitcoin and Litecoin, right? If you don't need the security and the fees are pretty high, you might not want to settle on Bitcoin because you don't need that level of security. You'd settle on a lower cost chain. So I do agree with you there. Is that how you imagine the future? I know it's slightly different from winner take all, but if there's two similar chains and one just has higher level security, higher cost, one's medium level security, medium cost, can you see them potentially coexisting for a while, or do you really take the view that
Some people really are getting the last laugh on this because I was always the one coin will win, but again, I always thought sidechains were right around the corner. So this was like part of the view is, I think so. Like some things you can say. So if you open a thing, you could search Truthcoin Thunder, which is my giant blog post about the large block L2, and I think you can hopefully find it. Yeah, that's it. So in this, I go through a couple things. This is a long post. It's very long. But one thing is I say there is a huge spectrum of decentralization. This is we were kind of discussing before, like Bitcoin to Ethereum to Solana to like Base or something. And there's something else that okay, can you open another tab? And I promise this is going somewhere. Okay. This is the I wrote this security budget post too. So I
remember that one.
It's very famous.
Comparing it to the military.
Yeah, I do have that in there. The government can stop. Yeah, that's the one at the top. No, that one. So if you go all the way to the bottom, there's a part about Satoshi. You could maybe search, but I'll maybe stop when you find it. It's at the bottom. There is an image with Satoshi. No. This is on this post. If you scroll all the way down, and that was that part about that was it. Okay, go back up above the triangle. Yeah, this is it. Okay. So Satoshi had this vision that you're describing, actually, that all of you open this image, maybe you can see it. It's if you like view image, I think I posted a high res version, but I don't know how it displays on the page. So if you can see it, I don't know. Hopefully people can see it.
But I think they can see it. Oops.
Satoshi has this. He's talking about Namecoin, but he's saying there will be a separate blockchain and there will be minimal overlap. So he's talking about like a multi-chain future. So I agree with Satoshi about this. I thought they would all be sidechains, but he's saying you merge mine the chains, So he's saying he's talking about some of the stuff you're talking about, where I say low hash rate is a problem, which is my third comment on the right. You're saying, there's be different security chains and things. He's also saying it's kind of with merge mining, they should all share hash rate in the proof of work sense, not in the security budget sense, but. Anyway, so and if you keep going to this part, this part here, users shouldn't care about other networks of miners might. So he's saying like there will be all these different chains that will kind of have some independence, separation from each other. The network have separate fates. So this is kind of hitting on your point about there will be some networks will have a very large. See, he's saying this too. If you go to this on right here, if you just with your eyes. The second Satoshi comment from the bottom, where he says piling every work quorum doesn't scale. Bitcoin and BitDNS can be used separately. Users shouldn't have to download all of both to use one or the other. So he's talking about a world where they have different block sizes and they have different fee rates, and that's what he's talking about.
I see.
Even as the phrase in the bottom, he has expensive space in Bitcoin's chain. So he's talking freely use all the space you need. That's referring to the fact that the newer chains might have bigger block sizes that are empty. So Satoshi actually had this view of there'll be chains of all different shapes and sizes, and they'll all be merge mined. And he did not say. He would say, and you can see the blue part is where he does not have the two-way peg, because this is brand new invention in 2010. So there is no two-way peg, but that's what Drivechain is. So Drivechain is like the last piece.
I see. Nobody ever talks about this, but that's
no one ever talks about it. No one knows that Satoshi co-invented the first altcoin, and he co-invented merge mining, and he had this. Well, you can see that maybe he doesn't explicitly explain that this is how it will be, but if you read the thread as I've pointed it out here, and I've highlighted these passages, he clearly he has so I have this complete indifference to the. He just thinks, of course, there will be all these different. He just throws this out there as though it's not a big deal. And he's just, we can have all these different chains and they can all be merge mined. So he's referring to altcoins. So it's kind of like everyone else has this conniption and this anxiety and this negative psychological energy about the mere existence of altcoins. And people say, how could you even have this altcoin exist? Think of the Bitcoin maximalists of today. Compared to this, where Satoshi's just saying whatever, why will these other people will have, and he says you need to be people will be able to want to freely use all the space you need. So in a way, he's like an infinite size large blocker in the sense of not caring about the total amount of block space on all the different chains.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he says, without worrying about paying fees for expensive space in Bitcoin's chain, he's saying the Bitcoin chain will have a small block and a high fee. So really, it's kind of very interesting that my views and Satoshi's views have like almost complete overlap with the sidechain view, but the sidechains have never materialized. So, I mean, I think if they had back in 2014 or 2015, the block size debate would never have happened. Ethereum would have been absorbed into a sidechain early on before it would have grown. There would be other people. There would be people who disagree with what L1 is doing. They would just launch an L2. Everyone in the Bitcoin community would applaud and welcome this as a new Bitcoin project, like a new BitPay. And Sergey and BitRefill and all this stuff, they would just be using this and that. And at Bitcoin conferences, people would debate, should we use this L2 or this other L2? You know, should we use Base or Solana? And people would debate like the technical details of those things, but it would all just be Bitcoin transactions. So this is why I think that, you know, I have never lost faith in the sidechain idea, especially because people keep trying all these other ideas that are so terrible and never go anywhere, and I just don't understand it. So I'm trying to do it. Unfortunately, I think I don't think I'm really the fastest worker per se, you know, but I mean, I'm trying. I think I've been much faster than everyone else. No one else has like brought sidechains to the world in the way that is described here with the merge mind like two-way peg sidechain. So so I don't know. Like I do think if we found more people some people who are like young developers and they just want to grind it out, that would be great for the world and move things along and maybe have an opportunity, because the opportunity for Litecoin is that the Bitcoin developers are so like complacent and frankly just like you know, incompetent, and they not that they're very competent at their thing, but they have no sense of this strategy that Bitcoin competes with as a piece of open source software. So you could create all this stuff and they would not take it. You know, it's like you're in a gladiator fighting in an arena, and you're like go off into a corner and you build like a factory that prints machine guns. It will just walk right by the machine guns. Just mow everyone down. So I don't like, that's the opportunity for Litecoin. It sounds incredible to me. To me, it makes no sense that all this would have happened. I would have thought that we would have just all figured out that sidechains were a great idea by now. For some reason, there's all this crazy controversy about it. I don't even understand like what the controversy is. I try to reply to all of it in detail. You can look at my Peter Todd rebuttal image. He never answered any of the. I have 10 questions at the bottom. He never answered question number 1 or any of the other questions in the debate with Stefan Livera, where I asked at the beginning of the debate the 10 questions. He just like tried to answer question number 9 and kind of like didn't answer it at all and just never came back. Question number 1 is that his point of view is a total contradiction, even among itself. And he never addresses, this is like his entire argument is based on something that where he contradicts himself. And that's the question that if that were me, I would come out of the gate with an answer to that, like immediately. Instead, he retreated to like question 9 and like didn't even answer that one. And so everyone can look all this up, and it's just like, this is the lay of the land. I don't know. I don't really understand how it got to this point. But whatever. I think it does have to do with the fact that all these communities form cults, and they have a way of rising on the totem pole. That, like, if you publish a cool Lightning thing, then you get a lot of happiness from people. You know, you get renown and prestige, and it's because I have been like kind of slightly on the outside, but not too much on the outside, like the whole time, that I'm like the only one free to form like this independent. But plenty of people will tell you too that Paul's been working on this idea for so long and it will never go anywhere and it's a complete waste of time. Plenty of people say that type of thing, and then they tell you that, you know, you should use Wallet of Satoshi or something.
I 100% agree. I think we should, or I can try to help push people to at least look through it in detail, because you've been working on this for so long and it is well thought out, and get more expert, like technical opinions, maybe from Charlie.
Yeah,
on the idea, but
idea out there, you know what I mean? Like, and I would stop working on it.
Yeah, for sure. One other question on the idea of multi-chain. Like, I always viewed that as likely because to me, censorship resistance comes through paying transaction fees. Like, if hypothetically, these cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Litecoin, become a threat to the government, monopolized forms of money that we have, like the dollar, that they could potentially try to overtake hash rate, right, and take all these public miners away and start censoring certain transactions. The only way you'd be able to get out of that is by incentivizing more hash rate from outside the system through people just like keep upping their fee, right, until it gets mined, until someone's willing to take the risk to go set up that hash rate. And so that's why I thought that in order, like what the most likely scenario in the future was, long term, if this actually did become adopted, such that it was a threat to governments, that you would see multiple chains depending on what level of security they need, right? To send high value, you would need to pay these high fees in a like high threat environment. Whereas if you only have $100 and you want to send it, but it's illegal to do it because these governments are very controlling, you wouldn't be able to afford the high fee chain. Unless I'm misunderstanding something about sidechains, would it be? I guess my question is, would it still be easy for a government in that type of scenario to like censor these sidechains or drive chains just as easy as the main chain through these
Well,
types of
this
1%
question
attacks?
is usually formulated via the idea of it's something like the larger the block size is, the more difficult it will be to run a full node. There will be fewer full nodes, and it also harder to hide their physical location, like the bandwidth pattern, like on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is usually what people talk about when they say the government closing it down. They say like they're going to find all the nodes, make it illegal to run this software, because that's kind of like running the Liberty Reserve server or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that is usually how it is. I'm not sure if you formulate it the same way, but I can if you do, I can answer that question. But if you have something else in mind,
I was just saying, like, as far as a lot of the hash rate centralized in these public mining companies, it'd be.
yeah, I don't think okay, that is certainly the case. That does paint a target on their back. But what's interesting about mining is that there is not as much agency as you might think. Like, there's not as much discretion or like decision-making ability. There's not as much like. So we can break it down in a few ways, but like the pool, I'm going to explain it in terms of pools, because what's true of the pools is true of kind of everything else in a way.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I hope to explain it. So if you say you run a pool, and the pool says the government comes to the pool and says you cannot mine any of these transactions. Any transaction that ends in a 4 or something, I'll just say, just to make it as an example, a toy example, so we can figure out what's going on. The mining pool knows that all the hashers have their hashing pointed at the pool, and those people have money at the pool because they can only withdraw it periodically. But other than that, they have no leverage. The hashers can just switch to a different pool that's not doing that. And it's very easy to start a new pool, especially if there's a good reason, where people will say, hey, wait a minute, this pool is, or even all of the pools, every pool is censoring transactions that end in 4. This is just a fake example, but that's 1/10 of the transaction, or 1/16 or whatever. So that is, we're losing money now. This gives an incentive to create a new pool that doesn't do that. That really only mines the transactions that end in 4. Mm-hmm. So as the censorship piles up, it automatically charges this battery of money that will be discharged by routing around the censorship. Now, so basically, what the government, what sounds like an innocent enough request, that the government comes to the pool and says, "Here's a list of transactions you cannot mine into a block." That may sound innocent enough, but really, it's basically asking the pool to just commit suicide eventually. And what's true of the pool is kind of true of every other mining decision, because of the thermodynamics of the mining. The mining has a real cost in the physical world, and you actually get paid in Bitcoin, in a certain amount of Bitcoin, based on the transactions you include, the fees that you collect. So really, it's kind of like any flaw in mining that is introduced by either the management or the government, or the management yielding to the government. You know what I mean? Any
Mhm.
flaw that is introduced is just like so. But it is true. It's certainly the case that having these large corporations, and you know, everyone wants to be a corporation in America because the cost of capital is like 1/10 or something when you're publicly traded, when you're a corporation. It's just easier to do a lot of things. And that's partially because America is a great country to do business in still, despite all of its weird flaws. And in a way, we see an example of that even in the recent election of choosing like a pro-business friendly person. Like, what am I trying to say here? Because I want this to make sense. But like, we in America, we are obsessed, you know, and I'm like a libertarian and stuff. We have a lot of libertarians in America, you know, and we love liberty. So that's why we love liberty. So we're not a completely different. Other people are not even like, they wouldn't even have the radar for this. You know what I mean? Like a country like China or a country like Japan, they would not really have like a libertarian party. But we have so much that we have not only a Republican Party that's pro-business sort of, and we also have a libertarian party, and we have like this whole liberty movement. And we have all these different movements that are like adjacent, you know? So what I'm trying to say is, you'd think, oh, in 2022, you would think, what fools, these mining companies, they have incorporated in America. Now we're vulnerable. But then right after that, the whole public, which includes many, many people who are not Bitcoin miners and not libertarians, those people elected the Republican Party in a trifecta, Senate, House, presidency, even despite his like enormous like, you know, personal flaws and other weird things. But the Republican Party, a lot of people in America say, you know what, we want what's good for the economy, and we want what Elon Musk thinks and what Mark Andreessen thinks. You know, that filters down to people saying that that's what they want. So, you know, it's a paradox in a way, because it's like for as long as the corporation is going to benefit the miners, they should do it. In fact, they must do it. Is this making any sense? I'm trying to say.
No, I get what you're saying. It's basically saying that
I'm saying you would think, what fools that all their mining equipment is going to be seized and they're going to have to censor transactions. But actually, that's a bet on how incompetent the government is for business. If the government is actually going to help these businesses, then it's mandatory by making capital more available, by helping them plug into the corporate infrastructure, and now make it easy for them to raise money. You know, look at all the stuff that Marathon would do, where they just issue all these shares. They're losing all this. They were for years and years. They're losing all this money, diluting the shares. They have like this infinite money spigot. So it actually flips the whole question around. Just as censoring the transactions is bad because it's bad for the network and it's bad for the miner earning money, so too would declining to incorporate be bad if the incorporation was actually helping the miners. So it flips the whole question around, actually. The miners have to do whatever makes them the most money. And that's why I think we should bet on mining, because that's a very robust incentive and it's very unshakable logic, you know? So in that case, now it's very unlikely that anyone will interfere with any U.S. Bitcoin mining corporations, right? And they're probably going to have all this support. Trump literally came to our conference and said, there's going to be so much electricity, police or not, you know, it's kind of silly, right? But so it's actually flipped around. The whole thing is a bet on. And let's talk about what would happen if it was all a sham and then the government seizes the mining equipment. Well, they're only going to seize the mining equipment of the incorporated people that they know about. So now exactly. All the people who did not incorporate, except in the case where they managed to seize 51%, which is kind of like that's not good. But I don't even think that is like, you know, think about it like this. If they start seizing, or if word starts to get out that they plan, this is a disaster scenario that is very unlikely anyway. But it's like, let's say word gets out that the government is planning to seize 51% of the hash rate and just confiscate it. Well, if anyone knows about this plan, or if the plan leaks, or if there's rumors of it, you know, it's like this type of thing is going to be very difficult to keep completely secret. Well, then what does every miner have suddenly an incentive to do? Whichever miners can hide their hash rate will keep it, and the ones that don't will lose on 100% of their investment. So actually, it's not so. The mining thing is, a lot of these bridges we should cross when we come to it. Much more damage has been done by people just worrying about this or that.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
Yeah, much more, way more than the.
Well, thanks for answering that question. I appreciate your perspective on that. But I really do think that hopefully people can watch this video later on, and I can familiarize myself with in more detail on the technical aspects of Drivechains, and then push the community to get it in front of Charlie's eyes to really review it and get his opinion. And it's pretty fast from when they started to look at Mimblewimble to actually developing it and getting it, in practice being used. So it would be really cool opportunity. I'm glad I was able to talk with you for so long. I apologize.
This has been pretty fun.
Yeah, I wanted to get your kind of last thoughts, kind of from a general perspective, broad market perspective, like the next 6 months, 12 months in the cryptocurrency space. You're working on a lot. I don't know all the back end stuff that you've been doing, but what are you most kind of excited about going forward the next 6 months? Do you think it's possible that these Drivechains do get activated based on your talks with other?
I do. Well, one thing is that there has never been like an activation client. So I think people mistakenly think that I coded this idea in 2015 and people looked at it and then rejected it for a good reason, and then they have never picked it back up. But that's not what has happened. There has never, ever been anything that anyone could run to activate Drivechain. So there has been no. What we had before was I had a version of an old 2017 version of Bitcoin that we had installed BIP 100 in, but it didn't have like Taproot. It didn't have like all this stuff because it was old. And that was what like the Zcash sidechain was running that Peter Todd didn't know about years before. So like that was on like a kind of like just a network with play money, kind of maybe like an altcoin you could call it, with no value. There has never been that at all. And then the first time that there will be such a thing will be this QSIF client where the core untouched soft fork and there is no modification to Bitcoin Core at all, and any L1 that has this like ZMQ block subscription, anything that has like a Bitcoin shaped block can use. So this would include probably I have no idea like what has happened with Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash, etc. But like all like Litecoin and all these other Bitcoin similar chains could activate. So we will go from there being a bottleneck that is completely closed, which is to say, even if you thought this idea was great, there was nothing that was on. And we will go from that to something that is categorically better than any activation client that has ever existed. So that will go from being the bottleneck to actually being a big thing pushing it forward. A completely closed bottleneck. So I'm very excited about achieving that as quickly as possible. And it's a little bit of a grind. But
do you have an expected timeline on that?
Well, I think you can download it today, and it sort of works actually. But for Linux, and there's like different bugs. We're like, there's a little bit of bugs, and there's a little bit of like. But I'm kind of like, it sort of almost works today. I hate to say that, because I feel like someone could run it and then it's not going to work. Like, does it work on Windows and Mac? Does the front end? Because I have a lot of stuff too with like front end, and do all the pieces work, and does it look nice? But I'm trying to achieve this as quickly as possible. I'm actually kind of annoyed that it's taken this long. Because I kind of started. I had the original, the QSIF idea I had in like January, and then I wrote like a little paper about it in like July, and then it has taken too long to get it to. But various versions of it were released, like a proof of concept. Because there's a big difference between having something that works on your computer and then something that works in reg test mode that like connects blocks, and then something that will also disconnect blocks if there's a reorg. And then there's a big difference between does that work versus like the Signet version work, where now you have lots of different people's computers and you have different operating systems and people are broadcasting blocks. And then even from the Signet to the mining with real proof of work. So it actually is kind of a drag to, actually
Lots of
grind
moving
out
parts.
software that works. But it sort of works now if you go to you can go to releases.drivechain.info, and you can also go to layer2labs.com/downloads and try the launcher. I think we improve all this stuff all the time, so I'm always like kind of like ashamed of it because it's always a certain,
In process.
and then the next thing will be better, and then whatever.
Mhm.
But and I don't know, I wouldn't say that I'm definitely not the best software engineer, and I'm definitely not the best like project manager, and I'm definitely not the best whatever. So, but if you want to get involved, people who are
Mhm.
listening, then please get involved, and we will probably be
How do
able
we?
to achieve it faster.
How can we like join the Telegram? What's the?
Yeah, the Drivechain Telegram is t.me/DC Insiders.
Okay.
It's a little joke of mine, like Washington.
Cool. So we can go there. I'll join. I'm pretty excited about this
Join, but make sure
project.
the bounce you. The bot will, you have to type in like 6 digits or something. But we
Okay.
did a lot, but we have a lot of cool people in there, and people hang out.
Awesome. I think it's
Good.
it's exciting to me. I think I was talking to other people within the community, and they were pretty excited about the idea too. So we just need to get it in front of the right person, and I'll ask Charlie on Friday when I talk to him.
Go
to
back
get
at releases.drivechain.info. One thing I'd like to emphasize.
Where was that? Did
More-
I exit?
More to the left, I think, of that last one. Yes.
Okay.
So this is where we have GitHub Actions build the L1 and the L2 and push it up here so that the launcher can download it. Now, what is annoying for me and frustrating is that if you click in that folder, old pre-QSIF at the bottom,
Oh.
there's like all this more. We had all this software that worked before the QSIF switch over, but now it doesn't work, which is annoying. We have to switch to QSIF first and then kind of just like retool it all. And it's not going to be a big deal, but I'm just saying we were very productive in the past, and we had all this cool stuff that worked. But like now it doesn't. So like for example, the Zcash sidechain doesn't currently. It worked like years ago, and until the QSIF. Now it's in a state of not currently working. I'm trying to get it back as soon as possible, but it's just annoying that we.
Yeah, I can understand.
A lot of stuff that is like. Because a software developer will always say, "Oh, it's almost finished" or whatever. Stuff really is almost finished because it actually worked moments ago, and we just need to like kind of is this making sense? We need to just
for sure.
Re-plug in all the pieces, because with QSIF, what you do is previously you just asked Bitcoin Core, and we had implemented our own RPCs in Bitcoin Core that just do drive chain things, whatever we want, because we didn't care about pull requests to Bitcoin Core. We don't care about what they want. We just did whatever we wanted. So my own version of Bitcoin Core, which is a fork of 1699, which is very old, but it has all this extra stuff. Like it has like much better formatting. We changed all the stuff around. It has all these cool tools. It has like a hash calculator and like all these other funny little things. So we changed it all around to just do whatever we wanted to do.
I see.
The sidechain L2 would ask Bitcoin Core, like, who has sent money to me? What is happening on L1, But with QSIF, it's split up where the L2 mostly asks the QSIF enforcer software, but it also that software has to ask L1. So you kind of just have to like plug all the cables back in. But I just haven't done it yet. But so now it sucks because there's a lot of stuff that would work, but it's
that's unfortunate. It's like
once
if you
once we get out, then hopefully we'll be able to rapidly redo what we had already done.
For sure. You did it once. I can understand the frustration. It's like if you wrote a long research paper.
Then you go back and edit it because you changed something at the beginning, and now it's all 2 sections or something. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to Charlie on Friday and ask him about it and then push it in the community. I want somebody more technically competent than me to review it as well. But based on what you've said, it just seems like you've had this idea for a long time. You really have thought through it.
It's not like I need the idea to succeed in order to like get some. I think this is another misconception that people think I'm like selling this idea or something, and I need it to work in order to get money. That is not the case. I don't know if people are skeptical. I don't know how I could convince them of that. But really, I would just like Bitcoin to succeed. Or I would really like to live in a world where the features of the sidechains are available, like the Zcash privacy and transaction fees and security budget for the whole chain, and where we have competition also. And the prediction markets thing is something that was how I originally got into all this, was to make that stuff available. So that is really why I'm kind of doing all this. And I think people get confused and they think that, like, but in a weird way, it's a kind of projection, because many people have started up a business model that relies on the L1 or L2 landscape being a certain way, such as Lightning and such as Liquid. So they rely on it being a certain way. So if I actually come up and I just blow up the whole space, and now the L2 space is solved, and L1 does not, L1 has everything it needs now to accommodate all these different L2s, and
disrupt all those people.
maybe it does disrupt. Yeah. So I think that actually some of that is a projection. So I would
Probably. I mean, competition's like naturally violent, and people in power don't want to lose their jobs, you know. So
right, unfortunately.
makes sense. Well, that's awesome. I'll make sure to push this, because I think a lot of people are excited. Just need somebody to review it, and I think from your experience, it's just like nobody has taken the time to go through it all. Like they'll just, you know, dismiss it before.
Yeah, it would be great if people could like point to something in the BIP, like an actual line in the BIP where they say this part is the part that has such and such bad consequence. I would love to see that. That would be great.
Yeah, and then you have at least something to refute and respond to, which is what you're asking for, basically.
Yes.
Cool. Well, any final things that we didn't talk? I know.
Well, we talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I need to lose my voice.
It's been great. Sorry for making you talk so much, but I really do appreciate it. Like, I learned a lot, and this is valuable for this community that we just started. To hear somebody who's been involved for so long.
More competition that Litecoin brings. The problem in the crypto space is actually the competition is all very weak, because the network effects keep everyone trapped in their coin, and they make it actually hard to start a new coin. Paradoxically, you'd think it's much better. I mean, one crazy thought is, well, I'll get back to that in a second. What I was going to say is that the more Litecoin improves, the more of a threat it is to Bitcoin, the better that is for all Bitcoin users, because this may actually motivate Bitcoin users to demand more rapid. Everyone may demand. We say like, well, listen, now Litecoin is going to like do. So this is better for everyone. The more each competitor, the stronger each competitor gets, the overall the better for the user. And I just think about how easy it is to compete in this industry versus any other industry. So we got to take advantage of whenever we have the ability to compete. We must take advantage of it, because that is competition benefits all consumers, all workers, and all everything. So
yeah, 100%. I agree. That's the goal, is to benefit the end users. It's just unfortunate that the kind of incentives in this space are to benefit like the people
giving everyone a long leash. The Bitcoin development community has a long leash because Ethereum is so weird and it does all these weird changes, and because of this and that, you know, if they're on a long leash because people are not bringing the heat, you know, actually, it's like, so actually, I would prefer it if and collaborating in the Bitcoin community, it seems to not get you, it seems to go very slow. So actually, I think juicing the competitor to help them win is probably literally not only best for Litecoin community, maybe literally just best for like all of mankind, and even better for most of the Bitcoin community, who is not these small minority of core developers who are complacent and not doing anything because they feel like the most important priority is just to not do anything controversial.
For sure. Yeah. There's one thing I just thought of, last question, because I almost forgot about it. Are you familiar with Eric Voskuil's like Bitcoin?
Yeah, I had no idea how good it was. There were always whispers about, oh, it's better. Whispers in the darkness, you know, whisper about this, that. And it's like, I had no idea it was that much better. And yeah, this speaks to the incentives of Bitcoin Core, which is like a bunch of weirdos in a committee meeting in a, you know, decentralized circle of just not taking responsibility for anything and just trying to avoid being sued by Craig Wright and trying to avoid having anyone's name on anything, and trying to, and the lead maintainer resigned and did not name a successor, and so no one knows who the lead maintainer is on GitHub. I guess presumably people at GitHub know, but people who work at GitHub, some of them must be able to know, but no one else knows. Versus a guy who is just tinkering with it a little bit each day out of the love of the craft.
Mm-hmm.
Blowout victory. Like, it's unbelievable how much better. I mean, I haven't exactly evaluated his claims with an incredibly critical eye, but there's literally, I have known Eric Voskuil for a long time, and there's like no reason for him to lie about this at all.
Yeah, he doesn't.
How I've known him for many, many years, and this is completely possible that Bitcoin Core is obsessed about camel case style guides and endless refactoring of the code and lots of unit tests, and they just do all this blah blah blah, nothing. Meanwhile, Eric Voskuil is just like slowly actually taking the engine apart and rebuilding it with the goal of improving the performance. So I totally believe that and I think he will get it down. He's talked about like the theoretical limit, which is just the block size divided by your internet speed.
Mm-hmm.
It seems as though he's like actually close to hitting that.
Yeah, he has. I think it was something with the UTXO store architecture that he changed, that he believed Core had a design flaw in, and nobody really reevaluated it. But yeah, he's one of the few people I trust his opinion, because he's non-biased. He always has been. He's always just been strict.
This is also
kind of on the outside.
He knows. Well, he's like a very disciplined thinker, so he has that book where he has like put it on GitHub, and he has like looking out for like things. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like a very mathematically autistic like book type thing. It's very interesting in that way. But he has this is something that he has actually been working on day to day. So the people who work on something with the code, they know the details, and he will just change if he thinks something isn't right. He'll just change it. So I think that and yeah, if you sync a Bitcoin Core full node, whatever, like even on a fast computer with fast internet, it takes like a whole day or even longer. So the idea that he got it down to
45 minutes or
5 minutes, right? That speaks that is just the ratio of how bad Bitcoin Core development is. So that's the proof.
Well, hopefully people can find out about it and adopt it if it is that way. It's just like a
thing because Eric has never put out as far as I know, this may be mistaken, but I think it's true that he has never put out like a version 1.0. So it's just an endless stream of him just tinkering. So you see, it's not like no one would ever. It's similar to what I was saying about how there's never been a BIP300 activation client. Like if you wanted to switch, like no one would. You know what I mean? Like no one would switch. You wouldn't be like Coinbase, the company, and then say, okay, we're going to switch. Like, you know what I mean? Because they have expensive computers. They're not going to switch to something that is not what most people are running. So the network effects are very strong. But and he has not. You have to put out like a version 1.0, and you have to maybe put out either in the software itself, or you need to have some kind of like interface server or something that has like absolutely identical RPCs, and you know what I mean, to like kind of make it so that you could just hot swap out Core and put this thing in.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I don't think he has done. I may be totally wrong about this, but I don't think he has done that, because again, that's like a grind. You have to like grind out a bunch of boring crap to like make sure that it's all exactly the same. Even every silly thing that Bitcoin does, Bitcoin Core does a lot of crazy things. Like the wallet is terrible, and the wallet doesn't support BIP39, and like now, has Eric Voskuil upgraded his libbitcoin thing to like be compatible with descriptor wallets? Like, I kind of hope that he has not, because that's like
I have no idea, but
so
yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but it's cool.
To what extent? How has he done it where has separated the wallet from the node? Like, I don't know. There's like all these questions. So like he would have to. I have no idea what he's done with that. Maybe he has done all those things, but if it's not it's very difficult to, because Bitcoin Core is also changing all the time. So what is he supposed to do? Like keep trying to make it exactly the same? Or is he just saying, this is a piece of software that connects to the network, downloads blocks, and it tells me whether or not, my transaction has confirmations. So it's a difficult. It's kind of there's a difficult thing between just being the best and being something that people would swap out.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, unfortunately, right.
Well, hopefully it gets more funding or can have some help to get it to that point, but massive improvement anyways. Well, that's the last thing I had to ask you, Paul. I really appreciate the time. I've known you for a while. I talked to you on another account about this thesis of substitution that I had back in 2017. So we talked a little bit, but it was cool to actually meet you, I guess online over voice chat, and I appreciate your time.
Well, hey, thanks for having me.
And then after I talk to Charlie, or potentially ask him about it and gather some community support, some reviews, I can reach out to you in
Yeah, please do.
I'm just hoping to try to push something forward with this community, and I think it's possible. So
Okay, great.
thanks so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and sorry for taking so much of your time.
Yeah, no, it's been fun.
Okay, awesome. Nice to meet you again.
Yeah, see you later.
All right, see you, Paul. Oh, I forgot to ask if you guys had any questions for Paul. My bad on that. But that was really interesting. Paul has been around so long, super smart guy. Obviously knows what he's talking about, very technically competent, and then also economically very smart. So thanks for sticking around and watching, hanging out with us. What do you guys think of Drivechains, though? Do you think that's something you would like to see implemented? Guy's even smarter than you. Yeah, smarter than me too. We can quickly review what happened to price. I know from a technical perspective, like we were just saying before Paul jumped on, that this looked pretty weak. Probably come down and retest this level. It's doing that now. Probably just takes a little more time. Yes, you would support Drivechains. Awesome. Did miners dump? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm still trying to figure out this interview thing. I don't know if I'm doing the best job. It's a learning process for me. Somebody told me the other day that I interrupted too much, so I was trying not to interrupt, but there's a lag whenever you're on like Zoom or online where it's kind of hard to know if the other person's finished talking or not. But I will probably take a break here for a bit. Thanks to Paul again for showing up and spending so much time with us. I think we should push this to get it under the right people's eyes to evaluate it. Because if it is indeed as promising as it sounds, and relatively easy because he's done all the work and is going to have this activation client, I don't see why we wouldn't try it out. But cool, guys. I'll be back if I start to see some development on the lower time frames for price. We can talk about that. But for now, I think it's going to be relatively boring. So as soon as something develops, I'll be online. If not, tomorrow. Last thing, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. We'll have Charlie on here Friday at 7 p.m. So that'll be really cool. Don't miss that one. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Thanks.
In the ever-changing world of cryptocurrency, staying informed is your greatest asset. The Litecoin forecast brings you daily insights, expert analysis, and cutting-edge predictions. From technical and fundamental analysis to macroeconomic trends, we've got you covered. Don't let the future of finance catch you off guard. Subscribe now and stay ahead with the Litecoin forecast.